start without them. I mean,
Mike, is she ready?
regular board meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Dawn.
Mr. Bova.
Here.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Here.
Mr. Gottman.
Here.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Here.
Mr. McIntyre.
Here.
Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Mrs. Warning.
Here.
It's usually not this quiet. I'm scared.
Sorry, I'm taking this. We're going to just change the order a little bit, and we're going to start off this evening with our equity director and a program update from Dr. Philip Woods. So take it away, Dr. Woods. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you for having me tonight. Just to give you an update of where we are for our plan to ensure equity for all. As we previously stated, we believe that diversity is one of the greatest strengths of our district. Collectively, we will continue to pursue an educational environment that's inclusive and supportive for all. This is just a little background on the journey of how we've got to this point. And then we see that the Achievement Gap Committee was formed in March of 2016. The Achievement Gap Committee meets regularly to inform the decision-making process. We looked at Cleveland, Stewart, and Evergreen as our pilot schools to start working with. But in working with the administration, we decided that we would work with all 4 elementary schools, and then we expanded that to the middle school and the high school. Appointing me as the equity coordinator, and then I've worked in the school, visiting multiple buildings, classrooms, meeting with the principals, meeting with the superintendents, et cetera. And then we've also established a working relationship with Pitt's community that works with equity and diversity across the districts. And we've had a positive relationship with working with them. They have come in and helped us with our diversity training, our making goals or progress towards our culturally responsive pedagogy. And then we talked about, we recently had a recent training with the staff to talk about cultural competence. And then we're looking at examining our instructors as far as how they gauge themselves and they're aware of themselves so they can help and better service our students. Just looking at the timeline, we had Justin Brown come in and do some diversity awareness training, again, working with the University of Pittsburgh School of Education Center of Urban Education, working with our implicit bias training. And then as we stated in previous meetings, this work is ongoing. It's not just a flash fry, you meet once, talk about it. It has to be ongoing, and the district has committed to continuing that relationship and growing and working with our staff and our students. We've established a district equity team with representatives from each of the buildings, and then also, since the inception, we have done a district-wide support in the form of tutoring and instructional supports. So now, when I talk about the instructional support, in buildings where we're able to get tutoring, we have implemented tutoring. In the buildings where we could not get an established tutoring program, we've hired full-time substitutes to come in and work with our students who are in need or at risk. Again, here, instructional walks, observations, walkthroughs. We had a meeting with the principals, and we had just an introduction at this point as far as the crosswalk between Charlotte Danielson and the cultural responsive pedagogy. At this point, I feel that we still need to continue the training in the cultural responsive pedagogy before we go forward with fully implementing and holding the teachers accountable for the crosswalk. Because the last thing we want to do is put something in place and it hasn't had the support so that we can equally hold the teachers and the staff accountable. This next slide, I had a slide in about the data as far as how the district's doing, but I looked online and I noticed that that was already done as far as the district is making progress as far as the building scores and data. So one of the things that I've discovered is that we recognize that there's a deficit. We recognize that some kids come to us less equipped than others. But what we have established is that when the students have been exposed to our curriculum, our training, our staff, that they're making progress. So just talking with Dr. Short and looking at some of the history, and being a principal in multiple other districts, we always get frustrated when we get our results, and then we're getting scores from students that are coming transient. We're getting students who are coming from schools with less rigor or less accountability than we have, and then the school has to be accountable for that. So working with Dr. Short, what we did was looked at a virtual cohort. And with the virtual cohort is you look at students who've been in our district from 2015, which was the first year of the Common Core test. We found that there was 42 African-American students who've been with us from the inception of the test, the new curriculum, and then we followed those students from 2015 to current. And then slide here, I just took apart, I'm sorry if you guys can't see it, the results of that virtual cohort, and the results show that the students increased their passing rate, and when I say passing, I'm talking about proficient and advanced, increased their passing rate by 13.5%, from 57.2% to 70.7%. Now, I know the conversation is still out there as far as, okay, we're just looking at proficient, but let's also focus on advanced. The district, working with Dr. Short, Dr. Chakey, Dr. Rossi, have recognized that we are still deficient or lacking in the area of advance. But for the focus of this study, we're looking at passing. So the attention is still going to be paid to those students who are not achieving advance, and then we'll talk about how we plan to address that moving forward. But in the area of ELA, we have documentation, we have evidence, we have artifacts to show that students who have been in our school through the course of this time, who have received the education through our staff, who have been trained properly, who have been through the new curriculum, they're making progress. And the one thing I wanted to note is that in the ELA, in this cohort, in the year 2018, there was 0 African-American students who scored below basic who were part of this virtual cohort. So I just wanted to put that in there. Now, in math is an area that is a challenge for a lot of schools in the area. So again, in math, we have shown growth, not necessarily growth that we would want to boast about, but we have shown growth. And then in that case, we increased from 43.9% to 47.5%. And again, we recognize that this is an area of need, and then we're going to supply the resources and the supports and try to tackle and continue to make progress in this area. Again, I stated this before, the virtual cohort has proven that when the students are in this district uninterrupted, receiving the supports, receiving instruction from the training of the teachers who've been through the rigorous observations, walkthroughs, professional training, they are making they are making progress. And again, tenured staff members who have been trained in the differentiated instruction and the diversity training and the implicit bias, we hope that we can continue to make progress in that area. And then the last slide here is that Gateway School District is ranked within the top 5 schools in the state who have an enrollment of 15% or higher population of students who are African American. Now that was Dr. Short and I went on to the school index, and it's a public document. So if you could go on and you put the different criteria, and we looked at the statistics, and it's a fact. So you can't argue with data. Progress monitoring to ensure success, additional diversity awareness training. We just had an implicit bias training yesterday with the staff. There were several staff members that stayed behind and welcomed and was happy that we're having this training, we're having the conversations. I did recognize that we had a large group, and that's okay because we have to get the training, we have to get the information out there, but the conversations are more relevant when it's intimate amongst the group of staff who work together, because they're more likely to share. So we'll just make sure we plan accordingly and moving forward. We want to look at an equitable education delivery model, talking about our CRP, talking about looking at being more culturally responsive with the curriculum. And then again, as it was stated, access to honors and advanced placement courses for students who are minorities, et cetera, engaging communities and families. And I believe having these meetings, of course, making them public, being transparent, we're making progress in that goal. And then the most important thing I think that this district should receive credit for is that they have committed to identifying the challenges early. Because the earlier you supply the supports and make the supports during the school day, because we know our students and families have great responsibilities afterwards. I have students, and I'm sure in the district, we have students who leave school and go home and take the role as a parent or caregiver. So the more support that we can give these students during the day, the more likely we are to continue to make progress and continue to chip away at that achievement gap. Again, we're looking at the equity treatment of students. I shared documents with the administration as far as the discipline referrals, which discipline referral is more, we're receiving the most referrals and et cetera. So we'll continue to work with the administration and work through that. I want to work with the Q and develop a qualitative study so that we can get information from the students, from the parents, from the staff on how we could continue to make progress in this work, increase our tutoring initiatives, and then again, go district-wide with the equity plan. So I believe that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Woods.
Thank you for that. Does anybody want
Anybody
to add
ask a
anything,
question?
Dr. Shaky or
No,
Dr. Short, or?
clearly since the inception of the achievement gap, probably almost 3.5 years ago, with former school board director Steve O'Donnell, at the onset, we determined that we wanted to look at a cohort of kids and follow them through. And I think we've been able to do that, but we've also identified that there are many other areas that we need to grow accordingly. And we will continue to do so in both ELA, math, and science as we continue to move forward. But it's important to understand that the onset of the new PA Core, Common Core assessment in 2015, and we had a shift to new curriculum materials in ELA and math. And of course, with all the pedagogy and instructional strategies from the assistant superintendents and Dr. Woods, the information that Dr. Woods delivered tonight is quite interesting. And I think it shows that once we're able to capture these kids and we understand that there are variances and a number of different factors that come into play, and students are migrant today and they move around. But as soon as we get them, we take a pulse on those kids. We want to understand where they're at diagnostically, and we assess them. No different than whenever you go to a doctor's office. Blood pressure, weight, checked. Mr. Beist, wasn't that correct?
I wasn't really listening. When you said wait, my ears were
And then, of course, that physician tells you, or told me, all right, cut out the cheeses, the meats, the whatever, lower the blood pressure, and then come back and see me in 9 weeks. That's essentially what we do with our students. We're telling them these are their weaknesses. We've delivered upon additional time for instructional purposes within the classroom, and the effects of that are showing. So thank you, Dr. Woods.
Dr. Woods, I have a question, I guess a comment and a question. The program that you're implementing here is internal, and then we have outside that all the parents and the other members of the community. So you were able to measure whether progress has been made here, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be strengthened, et cetera. So you're getting some internal feedback using your internal measurements. What about the rest of the community? This is a hard question. Have you been getting feedback from some of the parents or other members of the community saying, attaboy, good job, or here's some suggestions, or can you do this differently, or have you seen such and such a study, or what? In other words, I don't know how you could get such feedback except by knocking on doors. That can't be done. But maybe the board has gotten some feedback that we could offer you, because maybe our ears are closer to the ground with respect to what's going on in the community. I don't know. But Have you gotten any feedback?
I actually have gotten some feedback, and we talk about transparency and being honest. A lot of people don't understand how I can work down the hill and still come up here and meet the goal. So I will have to do a better job of being more vocal and more visible within this community. But I am in contact with stakeholders, I am in contact with staff members, and I get information, I get feedback. But if the board is if information is shared with the board or administration, you want to pass along on how I can help improve or help work with the district, I'd be more than happy to entertain anything.
See, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find a way to showcase what you're doing here, and maybe we're not doing a good enough job of it. Maybe people don't have a vehicle to do that, like the Facebook or the YouTube or other ways, the local cable access station. But how can we help promote what you're doing here and let people know what it is so they can give us feedback?
I will have to work with the administrative team, and we'll come up with a plan on getting more vocal. Now, like you said, when I worked at Woodland Hills, I was at West Mifflin, I was very vocal and visible with the social media, and even down at West Mifflin, but I don't have the relationships established with the staff members to just take their picture every time. So
it's hard, right?
Yeah, so I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable, because some people don't like to be photographed. So we just had to come up with a different way on how to advertise or publicize that information so it could be common to everyone.
All right, so if you can think of a way to do it, let us know, okay?
I will do so.
And the information from the slides, we'll post those on the Gateway website.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is that all?
That's it.
If you have any
I'm sorry,
questions?
one quick thing.
Yes, sir.
You asked about school board members getting input. Mr. Helms, are you planning on saying anything tonight?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
I was gonna allow for the public comment from agenda items after our 3 guests, because we have 3 guests in the room, so I'd like to get through those
Well,
guests.
he's
and then we
chosen not
can-
to anyway, and the only
Okay.
reason I
Well,
mentioned is
just for anyone else who might want to.
he passed on some information concerning the gap. And as always, it was pretty detailed and thorough, because that's what he does. I don't know, it's probably too granular to go into now, I would suspect, but the point is, for me, that 2 things can be true. You know, we can have made excellent progress and still not gone far enough, obviously. You know, no one would doubt that. So the question ultimately is, how did we improve? You know, what have we learned about that process, and what else is out there to do? And this isn't probably the right forum to go into more detail, but I would like to talk to you, Dr. Woods, a bit more in the near future about kind of more detailed notions, because I've done some studying myself about the gap and discovered that there's some, you know, if you for example, Google the achievement gap in year-round school, you'll discover that lots of folks are having lots of success because people who are socioeconomically challenged tend to, as you well know, slide in the summer far more than those who are not. So one of the cost-effective ways, in a sense, to fight this is to have school year-round, which lots and lots of states and school districts are going to.
So
and which nobody wants to
you're
do.
suggesting that we go to school year-round?
I think that's what Jack Rubin just said, yes.
I don't think that's the conversation for
All
I
those in
am saying that there is data that very strongly supports the notion that that is an effective way of closing the achievement gap and doing it fairly quickly. I am not suggesting for a moment that it's plausible. The point is, there are lots and lots of tools out there. Not all of them are tools we are going to use. That doesn't mean we're not trying everything that we can.
Right.
Mr.
So,
Bova,
yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt, but to piggyback on exactly what you were stating there, the idea and the notion is more time when you go year-round.
no,
And-
actually, sir, it's not. In a lot of these scenarios, it's a similar amount of school days, but instead of the
I
3
hear you
months
saying
off,
breaking it off.
it's broken up so that there are shorter gaps
Yes.
between shorter vacations, and there is less of an opportunity for the progress that's been made to be lost. And again, I didn't create this notion. I've talked to lots of folks about it. Will it happen? Probably not. But again, the point is, there are lots of tools out there, And if you know, you're not a school teacher or have a kid who's in school and don't have to deal with the logistics and problems, it's a pretty neat notion to consider. Not necessarily one that we would ever do here or discuss, of course, without lots of teacher input and all of those things. But if there was not a better, quick solution to this problem, and people truly are concerned about the severity of this problem and the impact it's having on the black community, why wouldn't they say, yeah, let's do it? Hypothetically, of course.
I think Mr. Wallace has never been more happy to be retiring after hearing possibility of
You know what?
school.
No, just for what it's worth, a lot of teachers who are in this position have said that it actually makes their life easier to orchestrate because, again, the breaks are spread out through the year. They're extended breaks and they're extended times in school, and it becomes a bit, for a lot of people, less stressful than the whole on-off thing. But point is, I appreciate what you've done. I'd like to know a bit more about the details of it and how we can help you expand on these efforts, because if there's any gap at all, then we haven't gotten where we need to be.
Yeah, if I may, just, you know, from the very beginning with the whole idea of an equity director, an equity consultant, whatever our solution was going to be or our attempt to find a solution, it was never touted as a magic bullet or as that this is going to solve the gap and this is when it's going to happen.
Not at all.
It was always prefaced with, like, we're going to put our best foot forward. We're going to do what we can to attack this problem. And the first big step of that, and I think Dr. Woods would acknowledge, is acknowledging that the problem exists and then looking into the reasons why it exists and then starting to start trying to find solutions for all those problems. And I think this is, obviously, you know, I'm proud of the district and the strides we've made. It's not nearly good enough for me. I know it's not nearly good enough yet for Dr. Woods or the administration, but it is progress, and it's something that we can build on. And this administration, this board, and the staff of this district is committed to continuing to close this gap, to find the problems that create it, and to eliminate them.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On going to Mr. Bova's point about shorter breaks, do any districts, or is it ever considered a good idea to like bring the kids in for like a week of camp? I know with bright students, they have math camps and things of that nature. And, you know, would it behoove us to consider, say, bringing the kids in for a week in July, or 1 week in June and 1 week in July and 1 week in August?
We do have summer literacy. Also, we do offer up to high school through ELA, science, and algebra remediation. The Keystone is offered one more time during the summer period. So kids do take advantage of that, yes.
Just wondering.
Okay, I would like to move on to our student representative if we can. Ms. Bella Junta, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woods.
Okay, hit the lights.
Yeah, I don't have a slide, sorry. Hi, my name is Bella Junta, and I am the senior class president this year, and I'm very honored to speak in front of all of you today. I'm just going to touch upon some of the things that we've been doing throughout the year in more recent times, actually, and with senior class council, junior class council, and with our student government. So to start off, our most recent event was our Mardi Gras, which was held on last Friday at Strategos. It was very successful from a student perspective. We had a great photo booth. It was a lot of fun. The decorations were so cute, and it was very smoothly run by the teachers, like checking us in, getting us in there, and making sure that we're all there and leaving at between 9:45 and 10. So I thought it was a very fun time for my last dance, besides like prom and everything. It was very successful, I thought. And then a few weeks ago, we had our blood drive. We have 4 of those per year, and the senior class council officers have to run that. So we have to like keep track of attendance and everything. And we had over 40 donors, which like may not sound like a lot, but that's record breaking for us. Usually we average around like 25. So having 40 was awesome. The staff makes it so easy. They're so easy to work with. We really get kids in and out back to class with, you know, pizza, of course. And then our next one is the first Friday in April, which will also be our last one. So we're going to be training the junior class council officers to get with the system, what we have to do all the time. And then the senior class council students, we are now working with our senior t-shirts. We're hoping to have everything done before the end of March, get our order forms out there, have them out for like 2 or 3 weeks, get the money in, get the t-shirts. We have Mrs. Woolworth does like all our t-shirts. She's great, really quick with it. And so we're gonna have those done, and we're still working with like a design. Hopefully we'll get that done soon before February. And then moving on to March, we have our prom fashion show, which Mr. Mark Wallace is our MC. He will be there. It's definitely worth attending. It's a lot of fun. We raise so much money for junior class council, which will lead into your senior year, which helps you fund a lot of what I'm talking about. It's on March 20th, held in our cafeteria at 7:30. Again, that's a junior class council event with Mr. Randolph, but still, it raises so much money for the council. And then one thing I also wanted to talk about was the senior scholarship opportunities that are rising right now. We have our local scholarship that is due by the end of the month. So we are, every day on the announcements, everyone is encouraging students to turn those in. There's so much money out there for students to get a hold of. With even if you're not going to college, just like going to a trade school or whatever the case may be, there's money out there for you. And then the last thing I want to talk about is kind of going off like the equity presentation, was that this is the first year Gateway has had a Black Student Union, which is like a huge accomplishment for us and like really expanding on our diversity within our school. Especially during Black History Month, the students had made a billboard which had like talking about MLK, how he had a dream, and talking about like what your dream is, and students had like little posters with their dreams on it, like what they wanted to be when they grow up. It was really empowering. They had a week-long, like every day they did something. Like they had people come in, do like little TED Talk kind of presentations about, you know, being an empowering Black individual in today's society. It was a very empowering week, and there's pins. There was a lot going on, and it was very, very awesome to see our community and our school really come together and really celebrate our diversity that we have within the school. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella.
Thank you, Bella.
Thanks for the update.
Would you like to go to class during this summer?
Yeah, I'm out with Mr. Wallace. I'll see you guys. I'll see you at graduation.
Great answer.
Our next guest tonight is Ms. Tracy Riccardi, who's here to give us a little update on our preschool program.
Good evening. I'm very excited and honored to be here tonight to give you a little snippet of what our preschool program looks like. The program's been around for over 20 years. I took over 8 years ago, and it has been just a complete whirlwind and joy for my entire day, not only getting to work with the preschoolers that come in 3 days a week, but also to work with my high school students. This has been life-changing for me. It's been life-changing for my students. And I am so fortunate, I have 4 seniors with me tonight. And each one of them are going to share a little bit about themselves and a little bit about the program, just so you have a general idea as to what things look like. A lot of times people think that the preschoolers come and play. Although play is very, very important in a preschooler's day, we do a whole lot more than that. So hopefully through some slides, you'll be able to see just some of the really great things that we do and accomplish with them. And it's exciting too, because they get to go on and go through our kindergarten program here at Gateway. And it's always great to see and hear from their teachers how proud they are and where they came from with the little Gateway High School preschool program. So I have 4 seniors with me tonight, and each one of them are going to introduce themselves when they come up here and talk a little bit about their day. So the first 2 I have up here will be Jordan Henderson and Haley Kopp. And then I'm going to have Jarrell Thomas come up and speak a little bit. And lastly, I will have Peyton Engelke come up and talk, because we have a really, really special opportunity this year, and it's been just the most remarkable experience, I know, for myself, and I think for a lot of our high schoolers. So I'm really excited for you to get to see this. So
Great.
if I could have Jordan and Haley come up.
Hello, I'm Jordan. I've been in the preschool program for about 2 years now. It's coming up on my last year that I'm eligible to take it. It has been honestly my favorite class that I've ever taken in the high school program. Just being able to work with the kids and creating our bonds that we have together and teaching them like things that, you know, you wouldn't think that a high schooler would be able to teach a little kid like how to write their name or how to spell or how to like count. But so it's been great.
I'm Haley. I have been in the program for these past 2 years. This will be my 3rd semester in the program. It has helped me kind of finalize what I want to do in my future. I'm planning on going into pediatric nursing, and I think working with kids has really helped me decide, and I just think it's incredible to see what these preschoolers can do and experience working with them. It's really a unique experience that many other schools don't have.
So we're going to get started here and talk about literacy and language. Go ahead. So first we can see that this is one of our high school teachers and this is one of our preschoolers. What she's doing is a specialized lesson for her. She's really into horses, and so in order to help her figure out her name and like the order that it goes in, her teacher specialized an individual lesson with her. So she glues down each horse to each stable. And you see over here, the horse has her name, a letter on it, and then this also has a letter on it, so she has to match it up. We also like take them outside of the classroom, and they can go in the hallways. And he's not really, he's writing on paper on the windows, but we do have window markers also that they can write on. So it's just what they feel. Most of the times he's one of our younger ones, the high school teacher will dot it out for them, their name, and then they have to go over and trace it themselves. And they also use, sorry, you can't really see this one, but she's using foam pieces to spell out her name. We also use shaving cream and clay to teach them either how to spell out their name or just write certain letters in the shaving cream. The kids really enjoy the shaving cream the most because they get to get their hands dirty and play around and that stuff. So besides their names, they do individual letters too. So like if one day the lesson could be like letter C. So right here they have a C and they have to use their stickers to try and make a C inside of the big C. And then also over here they're seeing words that have C's and words that don't have C's, and they have to tell you, oh, car starts with a C, doctor doesn't start with a C. That's just more of the shaving cream over here, but over here we have magnets on her desk over here, and we like to put them in either macaroni or rice, and they have to pick out the letter and tell us which letter it is. This also works with their numbers too. I find that, especially my preschooler, he really enjoyed this because he likes to dig into his stuff and then he picked it out. And lastly, in literacy, I believe so over here they have word searches. And we'll do letters. This is another one with the letters. And they have to use a highlighter or a marker. And they have to go through the word search and find all of the D's or C's or F's or anything over there depending on what day that they're learning. And then also over here, we're working on them he's kindergarten ready. So what we're doing with him is we put out all of the letters of the alphabet and he has to put them in order. He can recite them, which we do first, and then after that, he has to look at these and be able to put them in order and say it in order. This is just another one with a different object that we use to spell out their names so they can learn it. Okay, so next is our badges. This is something that we started doing last semester with the kids. So basically what it is you pick out a badge for your preschooler to do. So I know my preschooler, he knows his entire uppercase because he's been with us for a year. So what I do is I take him and I take the uppercase, what you saw on the slide before, and he has to put it in, oh yeah, that slide right there, he has to put it in order. So once he puts that in order for me and 2 of his other teachers in different periods, he's allowed to get that badge. And we clip it right onto their book bag, and they get super excited, and they go home and they're like, Mom, look what I did, I mastered my alphabet, I was able to write my name completely, or, just it's other fine motor things like that. Basically, just to get them ready for kindergarten, we really push the kindergarten ready kids to have the most badges because it's essentially like a kindergarten checklist. but the younger kids do also get their badges too, and then it shows us for next year when they come back, what they have learned and what they have mastered and what they should be able to do.
Right, so I'm gonna go over this real quick before I start this because I'm not sure if we completely explained this. For our preschool program, it's not just all of the preschoolers and then one teacher. Every preschooler is assigned a high school student that acts as their teacher, and this allows us to help work with them individually on whatever they need versus trying to teach everyone, so that we can push our kids that are doing well and give a little extra help to the kids that aren't. So now with math, a lot of people don't understand exactly how you do math with a preschooler. We do teach things like geometry and algebra, and you may be thinking, how do you teach that to a preschooler? We do it a little bit differently. For geometry, we do identifying shapes. So we will show them shapes, we'll have them draw shapes. That's actually one of the badges they can get is identifying all their shapes. We also do a lot of practice with counting. Can you count to 10? Can you count to 15? Can you count to 20? And as you master each one, then we'll push you to count even further. Along with the counting, we also try to get them to identify the numerals. So a lot of them can count to 10, but when you first meet them, they might not be able to know what a 1 looks like or a 5 looks like. So we first work on counting, and then we work on identifying what number that is. We also work on things like measurement. To do that, we will either measure them with string, and then we'll say, oh, is your string longer than mine, or are you shorter? We can also use blocks sometimes. We'll have them lay down, and they'll measure you, and they'll put blocks down and say, oh, you're 8 blocks tall, or you're 5 blocks tall. We can also mix it up, and we have different length blocks, so you can use a big block or a small block, and then they can compare the different sizes and the different numbers. We also like to have them identify big, small, tall, short, stuff like that. So we just had an activity today where we had penguins, and we had a whole bunch of different species of penguins. So they were learning a little bit about biology, but they were also getting to say, am I taller than this penguin? Am I shorter than this penguin? Which one's the largest penguin? Which one's the shortest? And
So a little few more math
yeah,
slides.
so we'll use things like building blocks, and they'll count them as they build them. We also work on patterns a lot. So we will show them a picture, and then they have to recreate it with the blocks they have. Sometimes they'll make their own patterns, all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of different stuff we do with that. The cutting kind of goes with art as well. That kind of helps with your fine motor skills, to make sure you know how to hold a pair of scissors and use a pair of scissors. Because many children, when they're at home, their parents don't just hand them scissors and say, go at it. So we like to, in a controlled environment, teach them how to cut, how to hold a pair of scissors, and it really helps them kind of work all those skills together and do better.
Okay, so our next subject is science. Here you can see the kids are looking at pumpkins and squash. At the end of each preschool year, here, let me go back. At the end of each preschool year, we take the kids out into Mr. Party's pumpkin patch, and we let them plant the seeds, and then the following year when they come in back at the fall, they get to pick them out and use them for a lesson. They use these little tweezers as fine motor skills to be able to pick out the seeds and place them into these tins right here. Go ahead. We also do stuff with ice and melting it. So we teach the kids, like we put objects in water and we freeze them. And then we grab hot water for them and we let them use little droplets to freeze it out and show them exactly like, oh, like hot water melts ice. Like, ice just doesn't melt itself. Like, you can actually like do it yourself and melt ice that way. This is just another thing with the pumpkins and the squash. They also, besides the tweezers, they use the magnifying glasses, and although they don't do it well, sometimes they're learning exactly how to use different science objects. As you can see, trying her best. This is another science activity we do. So we take glue and we put it in little circles. And then, so the kids can see it, we put food coloring and water, and we show them like, look, if you put your droplet inside of the water, it's not gonna run out, like it's gonna stay. So it kind of shows them how like glue can be used as a thing to like make objects stay in it. And as crazy as it seems, right here we're teaching them surgery. As young as they are, they don't know it yet. This is another part of our fine motor skills, where they have to play this old game that many of you, not many of you, I probably played it too, sorry, played when you were younger. So they essentially learn like the different things that are in a body and like what's not supposed to go into a body.
Okay. So art is another really fun thing we do. So instead of just making art projects, we try to make it very educational. So we try to work with the fine motor skills, which is like, can you pinch things, like instead of using big groups of your muscles like you do when you run, it's more localized, and can you do like specific things. With art, we do a lot of cutting, since that is something that we work on with them. We also do a lot of gluing and pasting, so that they can figure out how that all works. A lot of our art activities, a lot of times we'll do like a letter or something. I know one of our ones coming up for the letter R, they're making a R out of a rhino. So they can kind of compare those two things and recognize that different things that they know also start with letters that they're learning. We try to really entice their creativity and let them kind of show us what their imagination can do. So a lot of times they can take an art project in a little bit of a different direction and kind of show us what they were thinking. We also practice writing their name every time we do an art project. So they have to write their name on the project. Sometimes with the project they'll be making their name, to just kind of make sure that they are practicing their letters, they're practicing all of the things that they need for when they go to kindergarten. And then for physical education, we love to get very active. We also do a lot of like little field trips with them, so we'll go down to the dance studio and we'll have obstacle courses where they can walk across a balance beam or do a somersault. We have things like they have to crawl through something or jump through hoops. This practices with their balance and their walking. Can they jump? Can you stand on one leg? It helps with all of those type of things because a lot of these kids will hit milestones like that while they're in the program. So we try to like help them out. This is one of the games we were playing. It's Hungry Hungry Hippos. So they're very active, they get to have fun. We're down in the dance studio in this one. We also utilize the gymnasium and the auditorium lobby a lot. So if they're playing like softball or something, they can go at it and run around and not have to worry about it. So they all really enjoy it. A lot of them, when you say we're having physical education, they all get excited and they're like, where are we going today? So it's really fun watching them do all of that.
So next is free play. This is a time in the program where the kids just get a little break from learning because as young as they are, it does sometimes get tiring for them to have to learn every 3 days like straight for 3 periods because each period is a different lesson. So they get little breaks like this, and they can pick out whatever they want to in the room and play with it. Over here, they're in the hallway playing with the Lincoln Logs and a train track. Over here, she put on her best dress, and she's playing with the Barbie dolls. They get to they get to role play with these. So we have princesses, princes, superheroes. We also have different careers like firefighters and policemen and stuff. And then they get to play with the blocks too. And even though it is free play, we like to sneak a little bit of education in there with them without them really knowing. So like if they build a tower like this, we'll go, oh, how many red blocks do you have? How many blue blocks do you have? How tall is your tower? Can you count how tall for me it is? Sneaking that in there and they don't really know it. Yeah, this is just them dressing up in their favorite dresses.
Right, so we also like to do a lot of stuff with our technology departments. So one of the things that we love to do is they have allowed us the opportunity to explore the workshops and observe all of the machines. Right around Christmas time, they got the opportunity, they were making ornaments. So we went down and they got to use the drill press and they got to pull the handle down themselves and drill a little hole in their ornament so that they could hang it. we also love doing all kinds of trips. This is one for the library. We go to the library usually every Wednesday, and all of the kids have an opportunity to pick out a library book, and they get to take it home for the week, and they'll either read it with their teachers or with their parents. During this week, we had a special visitor, our local dinosaur. This was for Dinosaur Week, which is one that they all are very excited about.
So this is, I think, it's our last one. So this is music, and as you can see, when we do have music, we really like to take the kids down to the Mr. Helchi's music room. So over here, he sets out a lot of his instruments, and they each get to play it at a certain time. And the big gong over here was the big favorite. Everybody loved to be able to hit that. So Mr. Helchi, when we go over there, he likes to teach them and like tell them their names, what name it is, what sound it's gonna make, how hard you should hit it. So it's very educational, and the kids just like it because they get to bang on stuff. Okay, I got it. So sorry. Besides going down to the music room with Mr. Helchi, we like to go down with Mr. Lassick to the choir room and let everybody sing their favorite songs, and like just show them also different parts of the high school. Like this is where you're gonna be when you finally get up here. But we like to take the kids down and ask them their favorite song and ask them to sing it. So over here, one of our preschoolers, Ariana, is singing Frozen in Spanish because she's fluent, she's bilingual. And all the kids were singing along as best as they could. Also, they like to sing all the other songs they want. A lot of girls will pick the Disney princess songs, and the guys just kind of, we only have a few boys, and they kind of just like sit in the back a little bit. But they'll sing along if they know it. A lot of them do jump in a lot, but the girls are just screaming out the princess songs. It's hard to get over them. Okay, so we're gonna shoot this over to, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I realized that we skipped one of the subjects, which is social studies.
Thank goodness.
I got you.
That's right.
Yes.
Teach those kids about self-government.
Yes. So unlike our AP US history, instead of teaching the preschoolers stuff like what generals were in the wars and the different wars, instead we teach them historical figures, and sometimes we'll do like the American flag, the eagle, the White House, stuff like that, so that they can recognize parts of government without really realizing that that's really what they're learning. So we try to do different objects and stuff that represent social studies, so that as they grow and they're learning about, actually get into the history of everything, they can kind of understand what, when you look at the flag, that it represents the United States. If you look at the White House, that's the president. So we try to put all of that in there as well.
Also with that, we do like holidays around the world. I know last year I had a social studies lesson, and I taught the kids, instead of like the general Christmas that everybody knows, we like to teach them other religions too. So I had to make me a menorah, like just cut out the papers and then glue them on. So every time holidays around the world comes, the social studies lesson, we like to try and teach them a different celebration of our general Christmas. That's great. Jarrell is next. He's going to teach you about study buddy bonds. Study buddy bonds.
Alright, I'm Jarrell Thomas. This is my first year doing preschool. I'm going into my second semester. And as you see, there goes me and my preschooler, Xander. He's funny. You'll love him. He's an awesome guy. But a lot of these pictures you're going to see is just the kids just interacting, bonding with other kids. This girl right here, she's special. You're going to hear about her later. She's awesome. But yeah, we're just interacting. But for preschool, you want to have a special and good, strong bond, not only with your preschooler that you're assigned, but with all the other preschoolers, because it just makes the way we do it, the whole process, much easier. Also, when it gets down to the teaching point, it's more effective for the both of you, really. But also, let's say the preschooler's not there, or like the teacher's not there, somebody has to work with somebody different, right? So when that happens, we assign, so let's say the teacher's not there, let's say the preschooler's not there, then we have to assign them another teacher. So we don't want it to be like first day, who are you, make it that awkward, like type vibe. So it'll just be like a heartbeat, it keeps on going. So if that teacher's not there, then we just get another one, and then they just keep on going with the learning process for that. Also, this for this being my second semester teaching the preschoolers, Mr. Riccardi's class, it affected me in a positive way. It made me realize I can make a difference in a child's life, and it showed me that it made me consider going to education myself as I go into my college years and major in education. So.
That's awesome.
Good choice.
So my name is Peyton Engelke, like Mr. Riccardi said before, and this will be my third time taking preschool this year. And I started freshman year in child development and in the facts department. I loved it. Sophomore year I took preschool for the first time and absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing that I got to interact with the preschoolers and make my own lesson and stuff like that. But sophomore year I still didn't know what I wanted to do yet with my life. I was still a youngin'. Everyone's asking me, what do you want to do? I don't know what I want to do yet. So that was kind of like, I'm taking preschool, but like I don't know what I want to do yet. So junior year, just with the way my schedule worked out, I didn't take preschool, but this year I got to take it again. And going into senior year this year, I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I would like to go for special education and early childhood. So it was just a new experience for me this year. I was able to look at it in a different perspective because sophomore year, it was like, wow, I get to teach these preschoolers, that's pretty cool. But then senior year, it's like, wow, this is what I'm gonna do the rest of my life. This is gonna be a really great learning experience for me. So this year, it brought me new experiences, and I am so thankful for these experiences. This is my preschooler right here. Her name is Avery, and this is one of the teachers that I work with, and her name is Miss Carey. Both girls have Down syndrome, and it's just something that's so special to my heart. Both girls are incredibly sweet, and it just, every day I get to go into preschool, and they bring me a great smile. So working with Avery every day, it's something different. We don't know what she wants to do that day. We'll try something new. This was actually from today. The kids were going outside in the hallway with balloons, and they're playing Simon Says. And so me and my other teacher, Riley, we took Avery in the hall, and we said, well, let's just play with a balloon. And Avery loved it. There was the greatest smile and belly giggles from her. And this is Avery with one of our preschoolers, and the story behind this is actually incredible to me. So the one day, every day we put hand sanitizer on the kids, and we got in the classroom one day, and Avery does not like to put hand sanitizer on, like any kid. So when I went to go put it on, and Chris, the preschooler, asked, can I please help? And I was like, of course. So I got hand sanitizer and put it on his hands, and he starts rubbing it in, and Avery is loving it. She's smiling, which I've never seen before when I put hand sanitizer on her. So I turned my back for a second, and I looked back, and Chris was playing patty cake with her, and it almost brought tears to my eyes to see that a preschooler so young was interacting with Avery. And as people and humans, we often fear what we don't know. And Chris made himself vulnerable to be such a great friend. And from there on, every day, all the preschoolers, they always say, well, where's Avery if she's not there? And they are always wanting to walk with her down the hall and hold her hand and play with her, and it's just so incredible to me. So this is a picture of us. This is our third period teacher for Avery. And it's just so fun being able to come in every day and work with Miss Carey and Riley. And we get to teach Avery so many new things and just have so much fun. And I'm so thankful for the experiences that I've had this year in the preschool program. It's brought a whole new perspective to life, honestly. And I'm just so thankful. So thank you all for having me here today. And I would like a special thanks to Mrs. Riccardi, because I know that I would never have seen myself where I am today without her. And this preschool program has honestly been so life-changing for me.
I don't think anybody can follow that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, for the record, at 42, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
So our next guest is Mr. Wallace and the Hamilton production update.
You know, I wanted to say, before I got up there, two things. One, my daughter was in the first preschool class that came through Gateway, so she's going to be 30. And so she was in that first class. And I like to say, I'm very happy you want to be a teacher, and I'm very happy you want to be a teacher. And I'd be disappointed if you didn't want to be a teacher, because you have a wonderful presence.
She does.
I mean, the presence, the poise that you showed when you were making that presentation is something you can't teach. So you could go to school for 10 years, and you already have. So that's a wonderful thing. All right. Back to,
Get him a tissue.
well, back to Ed Ham. That's the name of the program. I came to talk about Ed Ham. And the program is, that was a joint effort between the Rockefeller Foundation, the Hamilton people, that put on the performance of Hamilton, and the Gilder Lehrman Institute of History in New York City. And the idea of the program was that they would, those three organizations together would provide an opportunity for students who were in Title I schools, like we're kind of in Gateway, a Title I school, the opportunity to see a performance of Hamilton by the cast in that city. So on the 27th of January, the idea was that students or school districts that would make application, high schools that would make application, would be given the opportunity to bring students down to that performance for a fee of $10. And those students would see the cast of Hamilton that performed in Pittsburgh perform that play. And it's kind of an interesting story. We're affiliated of the Gilder Lehrman Institute of History, and I saw this advertised, and one of the other teachers said, we should apply for this, and I did. I applied for it and I filled it out, and I didn't hear anything from them in a day or two, and I called them and I said, hey, what's the status of our application? They said, did we contact you yet? And I said, no. And they said, well, you're not in. Well, all right. That was in October, and the program was more than just attending the play. The idea was that students would you would provide them 3 to 5 days of instruction. You would talk about primary sources. You would talk about the critical period in history. You would do a lot of things, that were part of it. And I'll talk about that in a second. But so I thought, well, all right, we didn't get in, and that's too bad. And I was on the app trying to get into the Hamilton myself, and I'd seen it in Chicago, but I wanted to see it again. But they called me on the 17th of December and said, you still want to participate? And I had I flew on, well, good thing that Bill Short is a close friend of mine. I flew on my own. I said, absolutely, we will participate. No thought of whether we could bust. They let us off. I figured we'll worry about that later. And
without asking.
Yeah.
That's easy to do when you're short time.
That's right. That's a short timer. I said, we're going to do it. They said, but you've got to have everything done on the 18th of January, meaning that you have to have that instruction. You have to fill out all the paperwork, you have to collect the money from the kids, you have to fill out all their applications, you have to do a lot of things. Well, this is a few days before the break, and then we have midterms. And so we scrambled to make this happen, and we were unable to have the 3 to 5 days of instruction in the classroom. We just couldn't give it to the teachers and say, okay, you got to teach this 3 to 5 day unit. So we did everything after school. We had a meeting after school, over 100 students attended. We presented, the period of time that Hamilton was. We talked a little bit about Hamilton, his life. We showed them, and this is a big thing that Lin-Manuel stressed in a lot of the educational videos that he put forward, that he wanted the kids exposed to primary sources, what primary sources were, how they might be used. We did that with those 100 students in the LGI for well over an hour. A part of that was that every student who participated had to do a performance piece. That meant they got to go to the play for $10, but they had to choose a topic in this period of time, from the time that Hamilton arrived in New York City through the time he was killed in the duel, and even somewhat after that. It didn't have to be about Hamilton, but it had to be about something. And what they had to do is research that, and then they had to either write a rap, a poem, a song, a monologue, something of that nature. I had no idea if anybody could do it or would do it. But we got over 100 kids in there. Eventually, 95 of them did. They produced either a rap, a poem, a song, or something like that related to this period based on primary evidence, much like Lin-Manuel did for the entire musical Hamilton. And one of the opportunities that we had was, and we had to do this, is pick our best one and submit it to them. And based on what they thought about it, they would let those students perform on the stage of the Benedum before the performance of Hamilton. Well, you know, we scrambled to make this happen. It was a lot like Mission Impossible. It had to be in at 3 o'clock, and Madeline and Jillian behind me finished it at 2:57. Helchi emailed it to me. I had my finger on the thing, and it sent at 3 o'clock on the dot. They called me at 5 after 3, and they said, we want it.
Wow.
It is, you know, so there was only 15 students that were selected. Only 15 schools were selected. So when we went down there that morning, it was a full program. We went down at 9 o'clock. We had 3 buses. And the big part of the program was all 15 schools went on the stage with the king, the guy that played the king in Hamilton. He emceed it, took them out there. They performed it in front of 2,700 students. You can see there they are, you know, and I know they'll be mad if we turn the sound on, but I think you can do that, Mike. You can turn the sound on. You can
Mike, sound?
Yeah, you can turn the sound in a moment.
There
We
he
will.
is.
But they performed it in front of the 2,700 students. Can you start it at the beginning? Now, I want to tell you, they wrote this, and they performed it, and it was selected amongst, you know, 27 other, more than 27 other school districts. But let's
From Gateway High School, we have
That's
Julian
the kid.
and Madeline.
Hey, what you doing there, Jefferson? Oh, you know, just committing treason. Cool. Why? Because the King of Britain sucks. What's he gonna do to you? Funny that you should ask. He's refused to accept laws we all know. Many governors pass laws of importance. He's passed other laws won't apologize. And refused to remark on words. He's used for a long time to elect an attempt to prevent the rights of our population. But his work of warfare, buying and selling men continues to withhold natural rights from the nation. He thinks he's fooling us, making it so of us. Because he can't help it, he's a tyrant and he's ruling us. But we got news for you, we won't let you subdue. America gives you our everlasting adieu. Protecting his own and everything in his favor. The British not going to come back home to you later. Since my parents were scrutinizing altogether compromising civil rights and punishing for our misbehavior, a helicopter parent watching over his kids. Newsflash, not 12 and we can't forbid. He's collecting, deflecting, solitary, neglecting, keeping monopolized money. No way to be. Put in a better lies, he taxes and defies. The King of Britain is a right that we can't empathize. Claiming our legacy, worth the making or clean. So take a sip and wash it down and taste our bitter tea. Truth undeniable, holding you liable. Because our terms and our demands were justifiable. Powers of infidel, colonists you can well. If you insist to sign a card and say our farewell, we therefore represent American government. And for the support of this declaration, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Hey, colonies, let me see what you have. A declaration? No! Oh my gosh, why they have a declaration?
Very nice. Obviously based on the Declaration of Independence, but I'll let them say a few words. I told them not to prepare anything, but I'll carry it. We'll ask them questions if we need to. But go ahead, say a few words about your experience.
Hi, I'm Madeline. Well, I just have to really say first a big thank you to Mr. Wallace and to everyone involved who really got us into this, because this was a great experience. You know, what colleges always ask for first is how much experience you have. You know, get that experience. You know, and this was the best thing ever, honestly. It really connected to me because I enjoy music a lot. I'm in the orchestra. I'd like to actually get into film and stuff like this. And so having this experience and then linking it with history, which is another subject that I really love, it really makes things
Who doesn't
mesh.
love history?
That's right. Who couldn't? Yeah.
I'm Jillian. Like Maddie said, I really love music. I'm not in wind ensemble this year, but I have been in years past. It didn't fit in my schedule, unfortunately. But I'm in the chorale, which is the top audition choir in the high school, and I do a bunch of after-school audition, singing and different lessons and stuff around that. So doing something like this and getting to perform on the stage of the Benedum was huge, because anytime I've been to the Benedum, it's been to watch a show there. So to actually be on stage and to see backstage and talk to some of the cast members and the prop manager and like a bunch of people back there, it was insane.
Good job. Good job. Bella was there also. Peyton was there also, as was Jordan. They were also.
I wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there?
Oh, you were now.
I'm sorry. Haley was there. I asked her that before. Haley was there, right? So they were there as well. So we had 95 kids. They were very well behaved. We had to walk from the Benedum to the convention center for lunch, and then back to the Benedum. But it was well done. Thank you very much. Before I conclude, just one thing. I want to thank Mr. Short and Bonnie for our help with that, and getting the buses. And I don't know if you'll indulge me for a moment, Mrs. Cerrucci. This might be the last time I have an opportunity to speak to the board. So I just wanted to say a few things. One thing I wanted to say is I wanted to thank the board, this board, and every board that I've had the opportunity to serve under for 30 years. I know that you put a lot of time in. I know that you take a lot of abuse and heat, and often unfairly. I know that behind the scenes that you're all laboring for the same thing, to have a great school district. And that you have been part, you all now, and all of your predecessors, at least in the 30 years I've been here, are part of a tradition that have made this place a wonderful place to be, to go to school, and to have my children go to school and to work at. I'd also like to thank the administration, central administration, believe it or not. Not only you here, but all of the central administrators that I've had an opportunity to work with over the years. You guys have demanded excellence. Not just you, but since I've been here, have demanded excellence. You've demanded that we hone our craft and that we provide the best education that we can for the kids. You set standards and forced us to meet them. You made us better teachers. You made me a better teacher. I appreciate that. I would like to say one last thing. A special thank you to Bill Short. He was my neighbor. He was my colleague, my program manager, my principal, my assistant principal, and now my superintendent. But most importantly, he was my friend. Thank you for your trust in me. Thank you for your support. Thank you for making it fun. We had a long time together and a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. You made it that way. And thank you on behalf of the citizenry and the others for what you've done for Gateway. All that I ever wanted to be was a high school social studies teacher. I'm so glad I was here. Thanks.
Is that the same guy that was in the negotiating room?
Now that everybody's crying, Mr. Wallace, I just want to say one thing.
Good.
You're not just a social studies teacher, you are like the best social studies teacher ever.
I apologize for
No, I was planning on saving my roast for your last official duty, which is graduation night on the field, like you've been there for the last 30-plus years. No doubt that, you know, as a young social studies teacher, notice I said young, and Mr. Wallace is slightly older than myself. Even though whenever I venture in his classroom, the kids always say that I'm the older one. I still understand that. I came upon someone that was so passionate about the profession that it rubbed off on me as an educator. And the time I spent picking his brain, understanding that he really learned, studied, and read excessively to hone his craft, and then become what I often refer to as the storyteller. And I think the kids understand what I'm talking about.
Maybe.
That there are very few people in this profession, and I've seen hundreds of them, thousands of teachers, that can mesmerize a group of 25 to 30 students by simply delivering a lecture and occasionally an overhead projector. But it has truly been our pleasure as residents of Monroeville and Pitcairn to have had this teacher, this educator, be a part of all of our lives. He will sorely be missed. I'm currently trying to negotiate contract extensions for prom fashion show, keeper of the clock, you name it, bring him in. I said he can come in and sub every day for U.S. history. I will have more to say with all of our retirees at the end of May at our board meeting, but for Mr. Wallace, it's been an incredible ride. Yes, you were my neighbor. Sound like Mr. Rogers. But clearly, you've rubbed off on everything that I've strived for over my career, and that is excellence in education, and more importantly, for our children, because that's why we're both here. You know, we've recognized it, and we've made it our mission to keep the standards as high as they are in Gateway, and they will continue to be. So kids, appreciate it, understand that you have an icon right there in front of you who has touched so many kids' lives, that still connect with them, that come back to share memories, and it's a special time. And this is Mr. Wallace's time with Mrs. Wallace and Maddie to enjoy the next several decades moving forward.
Let's hope.
Thank you, Mark.
And our condolences to Mrs. Wallace.
All right, well, with that, I'd like to open up the floor to comments from residents on agenda items. Did anyone sign up in advance to speak, Mrs. Isha?
Mr. Yakins and Mr. Newsom should speak as well.
Okay.
Mr. Yakem here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, John first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Riccardi, thank you.
Tracy, thank you. Very nice.
Thank you. Mr. Yakem?
Thank you, Mrs. Cerrucci. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Short, members of the administration, Mr. Dice. My name is John Yakem. I'm a resident of Monroeville. First thing I want to say is it was an honor to be here tonight to be able to hear Mr. Wallace. My boy is one of the students that have been touched by him. And my son's junior year in high school, he worked as hard as any college year that I ever had. And that was because of Mark Wallace. He helped my boy develop into the young man that he is, and I will be forever grateful, so thank you. I come here tonight because I am the chairman of the Western Pennsylvania Beekeeping Seminar, which is a strange thing to be talking about at a school board meeting. But 2 years ago, we began having our annual seminar here on the high school property. We utilized the auditorium, several of the music rooms, the LGI, cafeteria, and the hallway. This year, we had 400 beekeepers on campus. It was our largest event to date. We had beekeepers from 9 different states. We had beekeepers from Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Erie. We had a representative from the Department of Agriculture at our event. From an economic standpoint, and I shared this with Mr. Logan at the CVB, we had at least 4 hotels where we had beekeepers, and we had at least 5 restaurants where food and adult beverages were consumed. Next year, my goal is to actually have a more formal survey, but that was just an informal survey of some of the people that I talked to. The reason why I wanted to come and speak about our event, because of its success, a lot of the success was due to the Gateway staff. Misters Brown and Brown and their staff were absolutely outstanding. We pulled this thing together with a bunch of volunteers and a bunch of people that don't work together, and it's only our second year doing this, and the Gateway staff really just stepped up. Any little fire that occurred was immediately addressed. It was really nice to be dealing with professional staff. Greatly appreciate it. The second thing that I think was noteworthy was this year, well, last year we had a problem. The chairman screwed up and the coffee was a disaster last year. And in the course of the debriefing that I had with Mr. Short and Mr. Brown, they suggested that we work with the Gator Cafe and have them bring the coffee as part of their learning opportunity. And it's hard to fathom something where you're there as a learning opportunity for a specific hobby, but it felt good to work with these kids and the staff that brought them. It gave them an opportunity to work with the general public, step outside of their normal comfort zone and work with people that they didn't know. And there were, you serving coffee to 400 people, it's not always right. And the kids had to deal with that, the reality of a customer. And it was outstanding. And I appreciate what Gateway did. It was a lot of fun to work with the staff. I know we just received our final bill today. I know it's good for the school district because we spend a lot of money to be here. But it was money well spent, and I just wanted to come and make sure that we officially thank you and hope that we're invited back next year. I understand Mrs. Warning did show up. I didn't see you there. I'm glad at least one board member, I understand that you were kind of impressed with the magnitude of us. I hope we collected all the bees. Mr. Short, I understand, stopped in. Again, I missed you as well, and I apologize for that. We did have a few bees escape. I think we caught them all back.
I was a little worried come Monday morning to make sure the bees were out.
Yeah, I was thinking, if you remember the movie Animal House, we thought about putting them in your office. But anyhow, again, thank you, board. If anybody has any questions, most of you know how to find me, but I appreciate what the district did to help us out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for that report. Mr. Houston.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. How's everyone?
Good.
My name's Ken Houston. I live on Edgemead Drive. I'm not going to tell you the number so they don't throw eggs and everything else at my house. Thank this honorable board once again for the opportunity to address you all tonight. I apologize for my voice. I've had a few speaking engagements over the last few days, and it's kind of taken its toll on me. One, I want to say that for complete transparency, I'm speaking as the president of the Allegheny East NAACP this evening. A few meetings ago, I complimented the Gateway School District staff and administration for an excellent job in working towards the achievement gap issues. I stand behind my statement because, you know, it's oftentimes so easy to criticize and ridicule and talk negatively. By no means was I trying to diminish what we're working to accomplish together, right? So I think that there were some who took issue with what I said and believed that I was trying to minimize the achievement issues. One of the things that I pride myself on doing is I'm a good listener. And if I don't know something, I have a good presence of mind to ask. And so when I spoke the other night, I didn't speak out of ignorance. I spoke out of what was shared with me, so that the public knows and understands. I do my best to communicate with your administration. I do. I call, and I'm not going to call their names and put them on the spot, but I call them often to talk to them about my concerns, and no one has never not answered my concerns. Any information or documentation from this district that I've requested as the president of the NAACP, Mr. Dice and his staff and Dr. Short, they've always provided that documentation to me. So I stand by my statement that I do commend you all for what you're endeavoring to do to raise the achievement gap issue in Gateway. I think the general public also needs to understand that for the first time that I'm aware of, the Brown Student Union, Black Student Union, whatever you want to call it, African, whatever, is implemented and functioning in the school. And those kids are excited about it. And I'm excited for them. I really, really am. I must say, and I'm going to stop, but I'm a little saddened that Dr. Woods did not stay. And I have to be honest with you all. I am extremely disappointed in his presentation. I just, and I'm not, by no means am I saying that you all have not been working on the issues. I'm not saying that at all. But Dr. Woods failed to contact or reach back to us on 4 different occasions when we reached out to him. The public particularly had no idea what he was doing, and I just feel that you all didn't need him. Dr. Short, with all due respect, I think you guys did what you've done so far. I just don't see it. The presentation that was given here tonight was vague to me. I remember when he gave his first PowerPoint presentation and I looked at it and I said, you know, like Scooby-Doo, you know, the public's money was spent to bring him in here to help you all and to be a guiding force to you. He has yet to convince me that he did that. And I was going to ask him tonight, what have you done? We should have seen some more statistical data as to the teachers he talked to and what he did and in the manner in which he did it. And my time is up. I'm going to get done. But I just, for me, I was always concerned because I felt as him being a full-time principal that he would not have the abilities or capabilities to do what you all were attempting to do. And it was commending because you all did put forth an effort to do it. And he just didn't give us anything. I just don't see it. I mean, I'll look at the PowerPoint again, and forgive me if I'm wrong. Community, forgive me if I'm wrong. But my God, you know, dude, where's the beef?
Mr. Houston, can I just comment real quick?
Sure.
So Dr. Woods was going to stay, and he was not on the agenda first, but there was an emergency that he had to attend to. So I think I moved him up from number 8 to number 1 for
Okay.
that reason. So the timing was bad. He was initially planning to stay. I think that it was a little bit rushed or fast, probably because of that. But I think what the district can do is put something together that can be read, that you can look through, that would have some of the data, that would have some of the slides, that would do a better job, that on your own time you could kind of take time to look at and work through.
But with due respect, Madam President,
Yes, sir.
it would be wonderful if he could come back and explain the data to us as to what, and again, I'm saying this with all due respect.
Yes, sir.
I really am. But I don't care if you're black, green, purple, yellow. I will come after you with a vengeance when it comes to you not doing what you're supposed to do. He told us he was going to do something. He needs to come back here and present it to us. We know what your teachers have done and what your staff does, because it's obvious. But he needs to come back with our taxpayer dollars and just explain to us in very detail. And if he needs orator skills, I'll help him out. But he has to explain this to us. Please, I beg you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak on agenda items? Mr. Beistel?
Yes, my name is David Beistel. I live at 129 Pender Drive. I'll be really brief. I was kind of shocked last week when I saw the project for the turfing of the fields. And I'll confess I've only been coming to school board meetings for like a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years in July. And I know we're in the education business, but I see a large amount of money for athletics. And then tonight there's a approval of a $280,000, $280,075 for the track, for repairing the track, not replacing it. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Brown, you approved the $27,000 lawnmower that could get into all areas in the district. And now we're gonna take baseball fields and softball fields and we're gonna turf them or half turf them. And the only thing, as a taxpayer, I say, let's do the math and see how many children it's benefiting. And Mr. Bova spoke very eloquently last week about, we used to have 8,000 students and now we have 3. And I see the horror story that Century 3 Mall is out of business. Monroeville Mall is, at best, I think, floundering. And there's going to be a lot of tax dollars lost there. So we have to be very diligent in how we spend the taxpayers' money. And I ask you to look at the number of dollars you're going to spend and how many students you're going to benefit. Because, I love athletics, I really do. But, for baseball and softball, and when I grew up, I was on a baseball field all summer. I can drive by any field in Monroeville in the middle of the summer, and they're empty. And my other suggestion, if we're gonna put the fields in, let's UPMC and Allegheny Health Network that are fighting over, who they're gonna insure, that have deep, deep pockets and say, oh, we'll put your logo next to Gateway's logo on your baseball field, and you can pay for it. So that's all I have. Just do the math. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else?
I come tonight to speak to you as Education Chair of the Allegheny East NAACP.
Can you state your, before you begin, everyone needs to state their name and where they're a resident or your street
All
address,
right.
please.
My name is Cheryl Maccabee. I am the Education Chair of the Allegheny East NAACP. And as such, I am told that I am allowed to speak this evening.
Are you saying you're not a resident?
Right.
It's your call.
I have no problem with you speaking,
Okay.
please.
I am also an attorney who received their doctorate in education from the University of Pittsburgh Department of Education, which houses the CUE, the Center for Urban Education, which Dr. Woods referred to several times this evening. I was a student fellow in CUE. Now, Dr. Kestenberg, who, when I was there, ran the center, or worked very heavily in the center, credits me with bringing diversity training to CUE. Dr. Woods, his program he is calling diversity training, and I can tell you that Dr. Kestenberg, when she went to Michigan and received her specialized training, told us never to call it diversity training. That's an outdated term. So I'm curious as to who Dr. Woods is working with at the Center for Urban Education, because most people in the center will not allow you to call it diversity training. Now, I would like to also defer some of our comments until next month till we get more detail on what exactly has transpired with Dr. Woods. We would like to know if you conducted focus groups, what was discovered in your focus groups about Gateway's culture, because, I mean, Dr. Woods spoke about African American students, but you might have a large LGBTQ community here who is having, who might be having issues, and what, you know, has that been looked into? And we need to know the details of those focus groups, the details of what your culture is like. As a matter of fact, to have an inclusive culture, you need to know a lot more about your culture than what we saw in this presentation. And Mr. Woods also said that he had a large group yesterday. Now, yesterday was a holiday. Why are participants coming in on holidays for diversity training? Maybe that's something that you already know.
Yesterday was our Teacher in Service Day, ma'am.
Okay, Teacher in Service Day, okay. So there are many questions, and our president will discuss how we will present them to you. Maybe we'll present them in writing, or he will come back and address this. But we have many, many questions after viewing that presentation. And I thank you very much for allowing me to go and speak this evening.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I think, Scott, you would like to speak. Reverend Gallagher.
Scott Gallagher, proudly live in Garden City. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. My mind is preoccupied also on a family issue that's going on right now. But there was a question from Mr. Ritter that I wanted to I think I can address some of that, and also to my colleague, Mr. Houston, on some things. When you all knew whenever you were going to have a presentation on the achievement gap that you'd have some feedback, and that's important to have feedback. Also, there's sometimes, I'm a Steeler fan, many of you are in the room. The Steelers this past year won some games they should have lost, and lost some games they should have won. And I think that's the way that we can move forward with understanding the achievement gap. Sometimes we have wins that we don't earn. Sometimes we have losses even in spite of our best efforts. Statistically, there is an improvement for our African American students. But what wasn't in Dr. Wood's presentation is that being paralleled with the white students. Because if the white students have improved also, and the African American students have improved, the gap remains the same. And his focus is to be on the gap, not just on progress. Progress is great, but it also has to be a measure. We can make statistics say anything and all we want. I'm a pastor, trust me, I know how that's done. So if everybody's great, improves, that's just wonderful. But it can also be a sign of something else other than improvement for our African American students. It can be improvement in test preparation, reduction in anxiety, which both will produce better scores that we are measuring. As for community feedback, Mr. Ritter asked about feedback from the community, how that can be done. I'm glad to say Dr. Chakey reached out to some of us in the community to put together a community advisory council. We had our first meeting. We are planning another meeting in March, and hopefully meeting every month to be able to give that community feedback, not just on the achievement gap issue, but to look at the other diversity issues that we have in the community, specifically the faith diversity that we have in our school, the LGBTQIA plus community that we have in the school. All of those type of things that build into what make makes Gateway such a wonderful place to be, not just to live, but to be educated in. So all that type of thing, I wanted to make sure the public was aware that that is in existence, and you have my permission to publish my contact information. I know yours is all published and you get things, so I'll take some things too along the way if need be. But I do also hope that Dr. Woods can give us some more detail. It was a vague presentation. That it may have been just done in a rush, but I'd like a little bit more time. I think the community deserves a little bit more time to have some question and answer. I know I'm on my time. I just want to say in conclusion that when we moved from Denora School District to Best Center, one of my daughters was nowhere near to the reading level she needs to be. We had a teacher that gave extra effort, and within 6 months, she was not only reading at the level she needed to be, but she excelled at that. The program that they gave her was something that she was interested in, that fit who she was, and it brought her up to the point that now she's not only a homeowner, she's an executive human relations person working with immigration department. So that little bit of extra push, even if we have a community that is transient, we can catch them. And if they move on to another school, we already got them ahead before they entered the other place. So I appreciate your efforts, and I look forward to hearing from the community and Dr. Woods.
Thanks, Reverend.
Thank you.
Cheryl Boyd.
My name is Cheryl Boyce. I'm a graduate of the school district, as are my children, and my grandchildren will be in this district. So I've seen Gateway for 70 years. I've also been in Harrisburg. We've discussed the test and we've discussed the standards. We've discussed why we're doing this. And one of the reasons we did this is because we wanted kids to have equal opportunity. I guess my question is, in the east suburbs, when I look at all the districts that are in the east suburbs, we excel, and we always can do better. And children are individuals, and we have to look at them that way. There's a lot of problems with the concept of subgrouping, because then we are not looking at the child for who they are as a learner and a human being. But I guess my question to you, some of you are from other districts in the east, is what else is going on? I'm looking at Penn Hills, who's going down the tubes very fast. We're looking at Woodland Hills. We're looking at McKeesport. We're looking at East Allegheny. We're looking at Wilkinsburg, which is a complete disaster, and they had to move the high school kids out into the city. So I guess, what do we know if the whole objective to the testing and the standards was to equalize the playing field? So when you go from district to district, we're playing equally. What are our surrounding districts doing? Because what they do impacts us. Because I go to church in Penn Hills. I will tell you, they are leaving that district in droves. They are going to charter schools. They are going to parochial schools. They are going and moving their kids into this city, because Taylor Alderdice is better than Penn Hills High School. So that impacts us. Have you had a conversation with our surrounding districts to find out precisely how they're addressing this issue? Because I'd be curious to see what they're doing. Because at the state level, we may need a different kind of conversation where we're talking about, if you put these things in place, and this is supposed to equalize the playing field, and it's not happening, then we need to go back at the state level and say, why isn't it? And it's not just about money. You know, all the money in the world, it's about what you do with it. So have we had a conversation, because we have assistant superintendents that have been plumb in the city, and we have people here. Because when you talk about the East, I'm thinking we were only one of how many districts. So do we know what everybody else is doing in the way of making an even playing field with our kids? When they come to us, you're testing them. You have to, because who knows how they're coming to us, right?
And that's something, that's a very good question, Cheryl, and it's something that I get asked many times, and I know these two get asked many times down at the intermediate unit. And the question comes, what is Gateway doing? Because when they examine our test scores, not only proficiency rates, but I'm talking growth with PVOS.
Right.
It's a predictor of when a child enters a grade level, whether or not they've made 1 year's worth of growth. And it is significant what our results are compared to others throughout Western Pennsylvania. And it far exceeds what our neighbors are doing, and anyone else in Allegheny County.
And clearly, I'm clearly in education, you can always do better. We're all human beings,
Absolutely.
we have frailties, we're gonna mess up, we've got good days and bad days. But I was just curious, when we talk about the east suburbs, we're surrounded by, when you look at the data, and I worked for years looking at data.
Failing schools,
Failing schools.
no doubt about it.
Financially, academically, and a whole lot of
Yep.
failure. And I just wonder how that impacts us and what everybody else is doing to bring it up, because we can work all day, but when that child walks in this school, they bring that failure with them. And maybe the state has to have a different kind of conversation about what we're using.
And understand that whenever a child enters our school system, whether or not it's first grade, second, fifth, sixth, and just for the public to understand this, we analyze this data. When I say we dig deep, far deeper than, Mr. Elms, you can even imagine. I will just tell you that. Myself and Guy Rossi, we're on the board today for over an hour and a half, digging down through data. And here's something that struck us. We have 162 kids that have entered our district last year. They come in. And we had 60 kids leave our district in 1 year. That's how transient a population is in this district. We don't have the data from other districts. But understand that when those 162 that come in, we hit them immediately with assessments. Where are they at? We're taking a pulse. We got to find out whether or not they're at that grade level standards, 2 or 3 behind, or excelling. Because we immediately have to address those issues. There's not another district around that does that. And I'll be very honest with you.
I know I have to sit down, but, and I will. This is my passion, because I think I get very upset when we don't look at kids as individual learners. And I get very worried about that, because I've heard too much conversation in Harrisburg, sitting through too many conversations about how this is supposed to work, and clearly it isn't working at all. But that gets back to this thing. If the standards and the testing are doing the job they say it's supposed to do, then we should, across the board, have kids coming to you that can go right into those classrooms and pick up where they left off in the other
You
districts.
would hope that
but
all
that's not
districts
happening.
handle curriculum, instruction,
Right.
and assessment the way Gateway does.
But there's too many
And I know we
variables.
have teachers out here that could vouch for it, that we have drilled down into the instruction piece, 82-1, Dr. Chaky, Dr. Rossi, with those learning walks, to ensure that we're seeing optimum instruction. It's not happening in other districts. I'm just
No.
flat out being honest with you.
And it's a scary reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one thing, and I'm a big parents advocate, I know every family, I've worked with preschoolers, I loved your presentation
Mm-hmm.
tonight, and I can tell you now, we look at these kids at 3 and 4 year olds and say, in 10 years if life doesn't change for you, I know I'll see you on the 6 o'clock news. And there's those variables that play into the factor too. But maybe the state has to look at how we're doing this, because it's not the same. The playing field, no matter what the standard and test is, it's not the same. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board on that conversation.
If we look at 3 years' worth of data, which we have statistical information about, I mean, there's an excess of close to 400 kids who have entered our school district over the last 3 years. And on the opposite end, probably 350 or 300 that have left. And that's just the nature of what we deal with, come in, come out. But when they're with us, we're going to attack them vigorously and put everything into it that we possibly can.
And that's all you can do. Try the best with what you have.
And then the data will show that maybe that kid will be with us for 1 year and move to another school. That's the reality of it.
All right, conversation for another day.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
It's complex, very much so.
It's not easy.
Hey, anybody else like to comment?
Hi, I'm Lene Alameen, Ramsey Road. I'm glad that I got to come here when Mr. Wallace got to speak. He was one of my all-time favorite teachers and got to sit next to him, so that's my happy day. I just want to again thank the board for first acknowledging that there was an achievement gap and starting the work to eliminate that gap. I was also pretty disappointed in the presentation tonight. It was very vague, and it's not the first vague presentation that we've heard from Dr. Woods, so I'm just wondering when we get the not vague version.
Can I want to interrupt you for just a second, I'm sorry, because I feel like I just want to get something out here in the open for some ground rules regarding when we're speaking about people that are employed by the district, okay?
Personnel.
In our board policy, 900, it talks about what you can and can't say at a board meeting, okay? Speakers may raise questions, make suggestions, or offer objective criticism of school operation and program, but the board will not hear complaints about school personnel or other persons in public session, okay? I have the authority to terminate an individual who doesn't stick to those rules, and that's enough. That's all I need to say.
All right,
So I just want
just
to
the
ask everybody to
presentation in general.
respectfully stick to that rule and not name and criticize any employees.
All right, fair enough. So I just have several questions. And hopefully you can answer Dr. Short. If not, you can just let me know later, because I'm sure we'll talk. So, question one was the virtual sample that was talked about. I just wanted to know if that was a random sample and how was it ensured that it was representative of the population? What sort of rigor was built into choosing that sample so that we knew that it was representative of the population?
That is a virtual cohort of students in grade 3 from the year 2015. So those students represented the African American students in grade 3 who have been through grade 4, 5, and 6 over 4 years.
All
Meaning
of
that they've
them.
been consistently here within the district to receive all of the trainings, everything that we've had to offer.
All right, and in the last conversation that we had, visits were still in the single digits to each school building as far as implementing the plan. So I just wanted to find out more about the plan. You can answer these later. What plan did you implement? Because I still haven't seen the plan that was implemented in the presentations, regardless of who was giving them, and what evidence you have specifically of the impact of the plan, of the presentations that were given in general. So I'd like to know what the plan was, how it was implemented, and in how many visits did you do that? Because if it was the 2 visits and the 3 visits per building, it's concerning to me that the plan isn't being implemented with due diligence.
Yeah, and we can gather that data as far as the learning logs when we were looking for anything involving curriculum or assessment. We have that data that we can collect for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lene. Dr. King.
Hi, April King, Helmar Drive, Louisville. I wanted to share a couple pieces of information and I had some questions for you. First, I will say I am speaking as the president of Raising Achievement in Monroeville and Pitcairn, as the president of a community-based, education-based nonprofit, and also as a citizen in Monroeville and Pitcairn and taxpayer. First, I do want to share that I do have a doctorate from the same institution as Dr. Short and also Dr. Chakey, I think, IUP, and it's a very wonderful institution. I'm sharing that because I heard you share your background and I just thought I'd share mine. I have spent since 2003 working on the issue of the achievement gap, both through Gannon University and Indiana University of Pennsylvania. In my experience with that, I have also been to visit the University of Pittsburgh and their Center for Urban Excellence. I have been closely working with their African American, their Department of African Studies, okay? And I have also been to other universities to see what they are doing with the achievement gap and how it's being rolled out there and understood, including Princeton, including Harvard, and the Institute there of Government, okay, and also the University of Pittsburgh and Duquesne University. The Center for Urban Excellence, you were there, and you were there, at least I saw you briefly. They were very, very well-rounded in their presentation. One of the things they told us is, be aware that when you are focusing on the African American achievement gap, people will sometimes come and try to deflect and change the subject, that we should be focusing on other gaps. That's not even the case. That's not the item in question. When we are talking about the African American achievement gap, we have to focus on the issue in order to address it. It's no different than a surgeon who's working on your heart. He doesn't say, well, let's check out the knee. And perhaps because there are other issues going on in the body, we can fix the knee, because that'll be to the detriment of the heart. So that's why we focus on the African American achievement gap. My concern, I'm not going to speak on any employee, but I would like to ask the question of, if the research shows that things such as culturally responsive teaching and practices being used in the classroom, and this is something being taught both at the Center for Urban Excellence, Duquesne University, and elsewhere, I'd like to know, is that something that we are going to, as a community, decide to take on as a district and implement? I heard Dr. Woods talk about culturally responsive practices, so I'd like to know from the board what kinds of culturally responsive practices are being taught, used, implemented, professionally developed, being that these are practices that are research-based and known to work with the achievement gap. And last, I want to say, even if the achievement gap is being narrowed, which I do think there is some evidence to support there is narrowing in some areas of proficient overall, not the advanced, but proficient overall, there's still clearly a gap in the advanced. Even if there is, if our African American students are scoring at the level of students in other schools, that if our white students were performing at the same levels in those schools, if we would not be happy with their achievement, why are you asking us to be happy with the achievement of African Americans just because they happen to be higher? So those are my honest, genuine questions. I ask this out of respect and as a community member, having done the research and understanding the community's needs.
Is there anyone else who has comments for the board? Okay, I guess that wraps up the public comment section.
Can I just say one thing? I know this is out of order, and this is not.
It's fine, Mr. Houston.
Let me say this.
Could you go up so that the public could hear you from home, please? Could you go up to the mic?
Yeah, real quick. Let me say this, please. And I do agree with the young lady there that so eloquently put it. Harrisburg needs to help us. The NAACP, you might not know this, but we are aggressively advocating for the Department of Education and our legislatures to help you all. There is a very serious plan being put in place that my branch and other branches are trying to find a way to get resources for some kind of center in the summertime to support those children that are not where they should be. Because it's easy sometimes for us to, as individuals that are community leaders or whatever our titles may be, it's easy for us to throw the stones, but we've got to find a way to help as well, right? We've got to find a way to do that. And I think that I do agree that social and economics play a role in a child's achievement. But as a community, we have to find a way to support them outside of the school hours and the school years too. I think in the summertime as well. And I think we should put our money where our mouth is. We should go to these leaders that are elected in Harrisburg to find the resources and the way to support what you all are trying to do. That's the gospel truth, you know, and I'm a little frustrated with a lot of the finger pointing and, you know, I'm gonna do this and I'm a this and I'm a that, you know. Well, I think titles after a while get boring to me, and I've got quite a few of them. Google me, you know. I think that we have to find a way to help you all, and that's where I'm at this stage in my life. I'm tired of the lip service. I'm tired of the screaming and the hollering. I'm tired of that. I think it has its place, but I also think put up or shut up, and we have to put up to help. As a community leader, I task myself as a father who has an 11-year-old kid in this district. I believe that I need to put up. And so I respect Dr. King. I respect all you educators and all of you that work in education, because I see what's going on, and I think all the community sees what's going on, and I love all the kids. And we want to see all our kids strive for excellence. And so, Ms. Cerrucci, I really do say this to you all very, very sincerely. We have to find a way to help. And that's what at the NAACP we're working on doing. On the state level, in Harrisburg, with your education secretary, with our senators, with our state representatives, because you can't do it all yourselves. You just can't. And I mean that very, very sincerely.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. All right, well, I think it's time to get to some official board business here. And let's move on to Section A, minutes of previous meetings. I'll have to find it in Section B. All right. Are there any questions, or, I guess I need to, I'm just
What we got?
Where we at?
preoccupied.
Wanna take a
Let's
break?
start with number
Section
one,
A.
Section A.
So
Minutes.
moved.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second? Is there any questions on the minutes, is what I was trying to get to, Mr. Ritter?
Yes, I have a question. I don't think there are any minutes.
We had a previously held study session meeting 2 weeks ago,
Oh, I see it.
or a week
Okay.
ago, I'm sorry, it was a week ago.
January 8th. Okay, I found it.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
There's two sets.
January 8th.
Scary back.
January 15th. Okay, I'm just reading backwards. My eyes are crossing. I'm sorry. So yes, I agree.
Okay, so there's no questions on the minutes. Roll call.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Boba.
Aye.
Great. Section B, bills and financial reports and budget transfers.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Section B, resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approve Sections B1 list of bills, B2 monthly financial statements, and B3 budget transfers as listed in Section B at the Tuesday, February 19th, 2019 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Question?
Questions, comments?
Mr.
I'm off
Gottman.
my game.
Mr. Gottman.
Is there questions or comments before the roll call?
I have nothing.
See, I knew there would be none. Go ahead.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Boba.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye. All right, there is no Section C. We're moving on to Section D, personnel agenda, Mrs. Crump.
Thank you, Ms. Cerrucci. Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors accepts and approves the personnel agenda items 1 through 5 as listed in Section D for the regular board meeting of Tuesday, February 19th, 2019.
Under leave of absence, we have 8 listed. 1 new has been added since the last session. We also do need to make a change, Bonnie, and I apologize, we got this in late this afternoon. For the first one for Ashley Adamu, that needs to be April 1st, 2019 through the end of the 19-2020 school year.
Okay,
So that will be updated through there.
okay, that's no problem.
Under transfers, we have listed per the collective bargaining agreements. Employment, we will be hiring from part-time to full-time Ms. Contis, and also we have added on another part-time staff nurse. 2 paraprofessionals, a substitute custodian. We also have listings for supplemental contracts and volunteers.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there questions, comments for Mrs. Crump?
Mrs. Crump, one question. We get the board docs every Friday.
Yes.
Was there a mix-up with the personnel that was put on there?
Yes, for some
Okay.
reason January's was
Okay,
listed.
I didn't know if it was me or what, but thank you, okay.
Anything else? Bonnie, ready?
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Bova.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Motion passes. Section E is conferences and conventions.
Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approves and authorizes the following conferences and conventions as listed in Section E at the regular board meeting of Tuesday, February 19, 2019.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
Aye.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Bova.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci.
Aye.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Aye.
Section F, administrative.
Rossi?
Number 1, we have final approval of revised policy number 249, bullying, cyberbullying, that was placed on public display January 15th, depicted in Exhibit A. Number 2, we have professional development services with Apple Professional Learning. Note this is part of the district's Title IV program supporting high-quality professional development to improve academic achievement. Number 3, we have an overnight excursion for the PMEA Western Regional Orchestra for Mr. Person. We have several facility agreements as listed.
Item number 5, acceptance of district donations received during the 18-19 fiscal year, specifically $700 from Target for Creek Connections Gateway Middle School, and $500 from Rotary Club in Monroeville for the Robotics Club at Gateway High School. Item number 6, approve the district's opposition to H.R. 291 of 2018 and any further legislative initiatives by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to remove local control and oversight of earned income tax revenues from the Allegheny County Southeast Tax Collection Committee to the PA Department of Revenues depicted in Exhibit C. Item number 7, approve the extension to 2 current agreements with UGI Energy Services LLC for natural gas transportation services on the Peoples Natural Gas System and Equitable Natural Gas System through the Western Pennsylvania Natural Gas Consortium for a 36-month period from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2022, with a basis price of minus .39 per DTH as depicted in Exhibit D. Item number 8, approve the advertisement for the replacement of the dehumidification system for the pool at the Gateway High School Sports Complex as a capital repair project for the 18-19 fiscal year. Item number 9, approve the district's administration to request, to research, and to analyze available synthetic turf companies and their corresponding types of turf products for the possible installation of new synthetic turf sports fields at the high school as possible future capital improvement projects to be considered for completion during a subsequent fiscal year. Item number 10, this was added after study session meeting. Approve the following capital repair project to be completed by the following vendor at the following total amount during the 1920 upcoming fiscal year as depicted in Exhibit E. That is to ATT Sports, Inc., track repairs at Gateway High School Stadium in the amount of $280,075. Note, the above capital repair project will be budgeted for in the district's capital reserve fund budget for the 1920 fiscal year. The above project is utilizing CoStar's vendor pricing. Board approval is required now to have the vendor approved, notified, and ready to begin the track repairs at the Gateway High School Stadium subsequent to 2019 commencement ceremony, and also to coordinate that with our various other activities we have occurring at the stadium. And item number 11, also added after study session meeting, the 2019-2020 school calendar. Approve the 2019-2020 school year calendar as depicted in Exhibit F.
I'd like to move that we approve all but number 10. I'd like to just separate that for reasons that will become obvious.
Second.
So I have a motion to approve all items 1 through 11 with the exception of number 10 and a second. Is there discussion on items 1 through 11 with the exception of number 10?
Yeah, there was some comments earlier about the,
We're going to do that next.
what?
We're not gonna talk about 10 right now.
Correct. Now, there was a comment earlier about the turf, which is separate from the track issue. You know, if you're looking at it from a standpoint of how many students actually play baseball or softball, I'm sure that number's not overwhelmingly large. But when you look at it from an impact from the whole community, you know, our fields and the track and our facilities, our community facilities, we have a problem every spring, as anybody that's involved with the baseball team or Mr. Brown can attest to. It's a nightmare to get onto that field in the spring. The infields are just destroyed. You know, this is Pittsburgh. It's unfortunate the weather we have sometimes. And that kicks the baseball team into the building, which causes just a domino effect of logistical issues for other activities that are scheduled. It just creates a big mess. I think that, you know, at a minimum, if we look at turf in the infields, I think we can do it relatively inexpensively. And I think it'll have a big impact on getting those fields used, cutting down on maintenance overall. While there will still be some maintenance, we don't have to groom the infield. There's a lot less to deal with. It's going to improve drainage, I think, overall for the field. It's going to get the kids out there earlier to practice. It also opens up the opportunity over the summer to host tournaments and be able to utilize that field to generate some revenue. And I don't want to tip any hats or anything, but there are considerations and efforts being made to find some sponsorship money to at least offset the cost of the project.
Mr. Bowe, anything you'd like to add?
Actually, I don't think so. I think Rick covered that pretty well. Athletic facilities in general are almost impossible to justify on any per student, per dollar basis. It's just, you're right. You know, but if we removed the athletic fields, all of them today, would save some money. We would also detract from the experience of being a student in high school. But as Rick alluded to, there is a plan to make the facility more of a community asset and to involve some of our larger corporate neighbors, ideally in the paying for those facilities. So every time a school board has a vote in front of it about a football field or a track or a auditorium, I suppose, it's always the same question, you know. Is it something that adds to the educational experience? And there's no perfect answer. You know, people make their decisions, boards make their votes, and sometimes they get out of step with the community and they are probably not going to be board members for very long. Sometimes they get it right and the people say, yeah, I like where it's headed, and they get reelected if they run. So there's no absolutely great answer. I don't know, I'm just looking at you just because this is the conversation. No problems, no worries. We're going to do this as best we can based on all the evidence we have in front of us, and
I can certainly attest to what Mr. McIntyre had stated about the fields, especially come spring, almost right about now. Meet pretty much daily with Bob Brown. We meet up in my office probably around 7 a.m. and we discuss the field, and he allocates probably 3 to 5 individuals up there to rake the field, groom the field, and then we know at 12 noon or 1 o'clock it's going to pour. I mean, and that's just the subsequent nature of what we deal with. And then, all that is pretty much gone to waste. The game is canceled, have to reschedule, and then we're up there again the next day. for both baseball and softball. It's become a significant issue, and I mean, just the weather in western Pennsylvania, it is, and just trying to maintain those fields is becoming an expense.
And just one other thing I'd like to add about just the process that we're implementing here on getting the bids for this project. You know, it's going to be a fairly high dollar project. Something I've always been committed to is increasing transparency with the board, you know, in the public. We're basically just announcing that we're accepting bids right now, so to inform everybody that we're looking to turf the fields, or at least looking into doing it and looking at costs. The actual bids will be submitted during an open and public meeting, where anybody that's interested in bidding is going to come to an open meeting. They'll have 30 minutes to give a presentation,
Preview their product.
you know, to explain what they would do with the field, why they think they have the best product, the best installation, and then they will hand in you're not going to get to see the bids, obviously, because that will get a little bit screwy, but they're going to hand in a sealed envelope, which of course all goes to the business office, and then from there we're going to choose the best responsible bidder. Now that relates to, after this vote, the separate issue that why that other item got pulled out.
Any other comments on 1 through 11? Questions? No? Yes, fine, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Bova?
Aye.
Mrs. Cerucci?
Aye.
Mr. Gottman?
Aye.
Dr. Kalkstein?
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich?
Okay, now I need a motion to approve item 10, approval of capital repair project, capital reserve fund budget.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Williams and a second from Mrs. Warning. I would open that up for discussion.
I'm, again, just after what we just talked about with the transparency, you know, those of us on the board have known about this project, you know, off and on. I've seen this number a little bit going back. Members of the public, I think, come into this meeting tonight. This is the first time they're seeing nearly $300,000 expense. And I don't feel like we've really given the public enough time to digest that, come back to another meeting, and have a chance to say anything on it. You know, typically these things are presented in one meeting, whether it's a study session, whether it's a regular meeting, and then voted on at the next meeting. That, I think, gives the public the opportunity to see what we're doing, to come and make some comments on it. And I understand that there is some time constraints dealing with this, and there was originally going to be on the study session for last week, but we had a late bidder coming in. We wanted to look at as many options as possible. And so it was pulled from that. Now it's on here as an action item, and I get that. Personally, I would like to maybe push this until next week, or not next week, but the 12th, and vote on it then, to give the public the time to
Mr. Ritter, do you
digest
remember that time when you brought samples of track to the board meeting?
I do.
Do you remember when that was?
I can look it up
I want to say.
on my computer.
It was-
Take about 5 minutes. I
Okay.
can do that.
Go ahead and look that up. I want to say we've been talking about track resurfacing and track replacements for several months. And on the agenda at the last meeting was this purchase. And when Mr. McIntyre and I sat down weekly with Mr. Short, like we do, and we review the agenda for the week, we found out that there was a bid that we hadn't received yet, and we wanted to wait for that bid to come in. So we advised, you know, Dr. Short that we wanted to pull that until that bid came. Well, the bid came, and it was about $350,000. So obviously we weren't going to go with that. So they had asked to put it back on the agenda for tonight for time constraints. I think a lot of you who are involved in band remember last year when our wall was under construction and we had a major issue with not having a huge band competition here at the high school, which inconvenienced a lot of our band members and hurt them financially. And I think when, you know, we try to arrange these projects and pick these vendors, we have to think about those things. And that came up as, you know, we really need to get this project in the schedule so that we can pick when we want to have it done. So it doesn't, if I'm wrong, interrupt me, Mr. Brown, but we need graduation on this date, the band wants to have something this date, we have a competition on this date, and we're trying to resurface a track. So, you know, nobody's trying to not be transparent, and I think that's what, you know, Rick is concerned about, and it's admirable. But I think when we explain that and you understand that we have been looking at this for months, why it was pulled, why it's put back on, you would understand the need to move forward. And is that correct, that you are under the gun a little bit on this project?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so I'm gonna leave it on unless anybody else has a
No, I would
objection.
concur with you because of the time restraints, and I'm sure that's what we were waiting for. And we talked with the track coach a while ago about this, and the public's well aware of our intentions, and I think that we should vote on this tonight.
I agree, we've been talking about, in general, the track needed resurfacing, and I agree. You know, it's been, what,
Mr. Ritter?
15, 16 years?
Yeah.
I think you know, having a chance to look into this process a little bit more, I think the product we're getting is a pretty good product. I think this is, looking at a couple of other bids, it's a pretty good deal. It's something that we need. Again, it's not something I like spending money on, but I'm all in favor of doing the track. I would just, this is the first time that the public is seeing the number, and that just for that reason, if, you know, obviously if it's gonna cause a domino effect of installation and things like that, I'm not trying to cramp the rest of your year, Mr. Brown. I'm just trying to do what I can to make sure that the public is as well informed as possible before we spend nearly $300,000 of their money. So I'm gonna, unless Brian has something.
Anybody else?
I have something. Yeah, I guess during the summer I did make a motion that was involving something like this where a high dollar figure item would show up, you know, for the first time that the public would be seeing on the menu and the agenda, sometimes us. And, you know, it's just to, you know, have better spending. So like, I'm not saying that the track does need repaired. I mean, it obviously does need repaired and resurfaced, and we have talked about this for some time, but part of the reason was the motion for transparency, because again, this is not our money, this is the taxpayer money. So, you know, as the taxpayers, they should be able to digest this a little bit if the time would allow. However, wait, there was a part in that motion where, should we need to pass it, we
That's what
can't.
I was gonna say.
So,
You read my mind.
It's the other reason for pulling this out from the other town.
And understand.
Is this requires a.
Yeah, on the
Supermajority.
study session. It was on the study session, and we ended up pulling it.
Yeah.
so I say more to the community that we do have the ability to
Yeah.
pass this, should it be needed.
And it's a safety issue too.
I think we're all in agreement that it's a good idea for the track. Again, I just don't know if we need to do this tonight.
Okay, well, I'm gonna call the vote now. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
Are we voting
Yeah,
to
we-
not do it? or
Voting to
vote-
table,
voting-
or are we voting?
No, we're
I was
voting.
about to make a motion to table, to be quite honest.
Okay, Mr. McIntyre.
Vote now. Yeah, we're in a vote.
We're in a vote now.
If you can vote yes or no to approve item 10, to move
This is
forward
to
with the
approve.
track
This
repairs.
is
To approve.
correct.
I was under the impression that we were gonna vote to table just from your initial comment about that. We
That's
never
where I was
got to
going.
that point.
Where I was going.
So, but we do have to finish this vote? Is that what we have to do? We can't?
I didn't hear a motion to table.
I was literally mid-sentence, but
I think the whole
I
discussion
called
kind of
for the
started that way,
Yeah.
to remove
Seemed like
it
everybody
from-
wanted to move the vote, I called the vote, so I called the vote, we started the vote process.
Well, that's one person voted.
Yes.
Continue.
Mr. Ritter voted. You're disenfranchising Mr. Ritter's vote unless he wants to take it back, and then you can make a motion to table. With that indecision, it stands.
You know what, if you want to table it, then vote no.
Yeah.
Roll
no,
call.
well,
We started the roll call.
yeah.
Mrs. Warning?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Bova?
No.
Mrs. Cerrucci?
Aye.
Mr. Gottman?
Can I ask a quick question?
No.
No? Crap. All right, no.
Dr. Kalkstein?
No.
Mr. Lapsevich?
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre?
No.
We don't have a supermajority, so it's 5-4. So, fails.
Say that again?
Okay,
Did you
motion
say that?
failed, we do not have a supermajority, motion fails.
Why do we need a supermajority?
Because it wasn't on.
Because it was added after the study session.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Now we need to table it, right?
No,
it's
gone.
failed.
The motion failed?
Motion failed. It can be
Can be re-added next
Yeah.
time.
All right, so it would be appropriate to say if there's feedback from the public, now's a good time to do it because our next vote will be when, Mrs. Cerucci?
It will be.
We have to then present it on the study session.
Yeah, I mean-
Second
and
March
then
meeting.
the
You're
board-
presupposing somebody's gonna put it on for the study session.
This may push it into the 1920, right? The
Why,
2021 school
why
year.
couldn't you have it as an action item at the study
If Mm-hmm.
session?
it's the same thing.
Still gonna need a
Yeah.
supermajority.
Right, you could have it as an
That you
action
would still
item.
have it, that it's out there now. I'm just saying, Mr. Brown, how much is this gonna put us in jeopardy for graduation, for everything? That's what,
Well, it's not for graduation.
Could you go to the mic, please, so the folks from home can hear?
sorry to interrupt, but I'm just,
No, that's a good question.
Our concern is to get on the schedule with the company with our limited window, which begins July 1. From July 1 to the time school starts and football season and weather, we're in a very tight time frame. That's why we brought this up a couple months ago and, have been working towards that with, some other questions that needed answered for everybody. So we can't guarantee, that if we wait until next month's, voting session, that we're able to get on their schedule to do it in the time frame we need to do it. That's the concern, so if we don't get that, even if it's tonight, we're not guaranteed that until, we produce a purchase order. So, the more time that we don't act, the less chance we're gonna be able to get it done in this season, therefore having a whole nother track season with our existing track.
now, is there an expiration date on the bid?
Not at this point, no.
Thank you.
That's the last section item we have. Are there any comments from residents on non-agenda items? Mr. Elms, please step up.
Bob Elms, Foxborough Drive. This is really sort of information. Mr. Short talked about the tutoring program that Gateway has. It's kind of a group tutoring program. Ramp has a tutoring program also, and it's a one-on-one tutoring program. There's, of those kids who are fallen behind, there's a small group of them that are so far behind that they just get totally lost in doing the program. Last year we had 5 kids in the program. This year we have 16 in the program. We try to work very cooperatively with the school district because we're here for the students. And so I just wanted to let you know that we were doing that program, and I hope to continue it and grow it.
Thank you for doing that for us,
By
Mr.
the way,
Elms.
you had a very interesting presentation here with that, the preschool program. The achievement gap happens before kids ever get into school. There are kids that come in with the skills from that preschool program, and there are kids that come in with 0 skills. That's the achievement gap, but that's not the only achievement gap. It is such a complex problem, you aren't gonna solve it overnight. Thank
We're
you
not
very
gonna
much.
solve it in a year and a half either, are we?
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Mr. Elms. All right, let's move on to reports. Spongard.
Thank you, nothing at this time.
Dr. Shaky.
Nothing at this time.
Dr. Rossi.
Nothing.
Mr. Shaw.
Nothing further, thank
Moving
you.
right along. Mrs. Crump.
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Ritter.
Sure, we had a presentation about the Safe to Say program that was being rolled out, and we also had a presentation about the metal detectors. In today's news on all the channels, those 2 items were brought forward. A school district had a false Safe to Say report, and the school didn't conduct the session that day based on the false report, and a gun was brought to school and it didn't pass through the metal detector quite right, and so that there was trouble there. So I'm saying these are issues that we need to chew on and think through, and it's not just us alone. Other school districts are thinking this thing through as well. That's my report.
Absolutely, thank you. Mrs. Warning?
I know, I'm gonna probably take a while, but I have to. I'm sorry it's late. Mrs. Riccardi, I want to thank you. I had a grandparent come to me and tell me how overwhelmed they were with the program that she had over there. I've been in there, I've watched her with the, the students interact with the younger kids, and it is amazing. But they did focus on Avery, the special needs child with Down syndrome. When the grandfather contacted me, special ed is it really gets to me, my passion. He was just so impressed that she was able to kick a ball, to throw a ball. It's what she learned in that preschool. And he says, does the community know what they do? I says, I really don't think they do. So I asked Dr. Short, is it okay if they do a presentation? Watching these kids, the love for what they do with these younger kids, it's amazing. You see that they find out what they want to do in their future, something that they want to go into. And it takes a special person. And I just want to thank Mrs. Riccardi again and her class for going above and beyond, because it was really emotional. Mr. Yakum, yes, they were bees. There were bees that were flying around when I walked in. They're little, but I was amazed at the number of people that were here. I never realized it was such a outpouring of the interest that was there. But I'm glad everything went well, Mr. Brown, for making sure everything worked, both Mr. Browns. Mr. Crestar last Wednesday gave a presentation on online security at University Park. The attendance was very low. However, Monroeville Library got wind of it and asked him if he could do the presentation again. Parents, I don't think you realize what goes on online with these kids. And I wasn't able to make it, but I have all the paperwork and the pass-outs that he did. We have to really take a look at what's going on with our kids, what they're getting into, these chat rooms, little things that, we really don't understand it. But hopefully, when he has his presentation at the library, we can get more people involved to see what's going on. It's only for protecting our kids. Dr. Short, you're probably going to get a lot of, are we having a 2-hour delay tomorrow? Because the weather's supposed to be bad tonight.
Terrible.
Supposed to hit at 4 o'clock this morning.
Like from
5:30.
4
No, I'm just
2
saying,
a.m.
get ready. No, I'm just saying. But now, how fast this year is going. We had our first 4th of July meeting with the municipality, and that's right around the corner. So watch how fast the rest of this year goes. And as a sports-wise, our girls' basketball team is in the playoffs. We will not know until tomorrow who they play. It will either be Thomas Jefferson or Plum, and the site of the game will be determined. So
That will be Saturday, I believe?
it'll be Saturday, but we don't know who they're playing yet. But we wish them the best of luck. They got a good shot at it. And with that, one other thing, sorry. Gateway Middle School sent out a flyer today to all the employees at Gateway. A past former security guard at Gateway, which I said past former, same thing, Mr. Monteleone. Monteleone. His son Rocco was diagnosed with leukemia a few days after Christmas. And the school districts of Penn Trafford, Gateway, and Jeanette are putting together a middle school and high school jazz band festival. It's a benefit concert for them, and it's going to be held March 1st at Penn Trafford High School. I'm going to see if we can get it put up on our website main page. All monies that are brought in will go directly to the family to offset expenses. There will be Chinese auctions, there will be foods, there'll be baskets. John, you got it on your thing. But it's a good thing, and I like seeing the communities working together, the school districts working together for a good cause. So, Mrs. Cornelius, thank you for putting this out, and I hope we have a good turnout. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Warning.
Could I just
Yes,
say,
sir.
I found that Buildings and Ground meeting, it's October 11th, so if the folks at home want to go and take a look at the track, go to the Gateway School District's website, our district, school board meetings. The 10th item down is the October 11th, 2018 meeting. So that was 4 months ago when we had the in-depth presentation.
Thank you very much for finding that, Mr. Ritter. Mr. Levsovich.
Did I tell you that stuff? Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one thing. I have to thank the superintendent of buildings and grounds and for a pickup of a treadmill that I donated to the sports complex. It was a professional treadmill that it's just about 4 years old. I've been just using it as a clothes rack right now. So I figured put it to good use, let our students use it. And they were supposed to call me before they picked it up AM, but I appreciate they didn't call because they let me sleep. When I woke up 11:30, it was gone. Thank you for that, Mr. Brown.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Mr. Bova?
Just a couple quick things. First, I'd like to thank everybody who came in to talk about the achievement gap, and I hope that we can continue the conversation jointly. You know, it's not us against you or them against him. If indeed we can improve anything we're doing, we can only do it with input from the community and the people that are most aware of how the thing works. I'd also like to not only thank Mr. Wallace, I'd like to say how much I envy him. I've been pretty lucky in my career, but the amount of passion and emotion that he has brought both to his work and derived from it is a wonderful thing. You know, you've all heard that thing, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, and I suspect Mr. Wallace hasn't worked too much in these 30 years based on that metric. Lastly, Cheryl, you talked about what other school districts are doing. I don't know if anyone noticed, there was an article in the paper about how much school districts spend sending their school boards to conferences and seminars. Gateway was way down the list. I think we were in the hundreds of dollars for the whole school board, which is very fiscally prudent. The other side of that coin is we don't see and talk to many other school boards very often to know what they do or don't do. Well, right, you do on an informal basis, and you do attend some things too, but I don't have access to your social network, nor could I. So I think it's something worth discussing going forward. It's easy to read in the paper that Penn Hills had a tremendous problem, or what Plum went through, but you tend not to find out what the best practices are. You tend to see the train wrecks, because that's what winds up in the paper. So it's something I think we ought to talk about going forward. And that's it. Thank you.
Let's go to Mr. McIntyre.
Just briefly, again, I want to thank everybody that came tonight to speak and all the presentations, and that made the meeting a little longer than normal. It was very informative and very enjoyable, so thank you all for that. Just one thing I wanted to maybe bring up and just kind of food for thought, moving forward, maybe towards the next couple of meetings. In particular, this turf project we have coming. There's a decent amount of grant money out there that's available to fund a lot of projects like this. I know Monroeville Municipality just returfed within the last year or so the ball fields up off of Tilbrook, and I believe they got a lot of, I don't know if it was state, I'm not sure where the grant money came from, but they got a lot of grant money to at least partially pay for that. And I feel like there's a lot of grant money out there that maybe as good of a job as I think this administration does at going after what we know is out there, I think there is probably some that maybe slips by us. And I think maybe we ought to look at the idea of opening up a position for an actual grant writer for the district. And I think, I would leave it up to you folks, the professionals, to figure out how you want to go about doing that, whether it's a part-time, it's a full-time, if it's a consulting thing. But I think getting the right person, I think it would probably pay for itself relatively quickly. So if that's something maybe we could just chew on and maybe come up with something leading into the next couple meetings, I think it would benefit the district.
Perhaps when we're moving through our budget, a supplemental contract that could maybe address this.
Okay.
And then we'll have further conversations internally.
Yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Mr. Broughton.
Yeah, real quick. first one, I do apologize, again, if I get her name wrong. Is it Miss Junta? Junta, okay. Junta. I want to thank her for coming out. I believe last board meeting I asked her to try and make a return trip since she wasn't able to attend, and luckily she did. So thank you for attending, and you are more than welcome to come back for every meeting. And in regards to our presentations with our preschool program and Hamilton production, looking at that, it's just another wonderful and excellent showcase of the educational opportunities that we have here at Gateway. Not sure, what other schools can do that, but, for any prospective families looking at the Gateway or families considering possibly leaving, being able to have that preschool class, being able to partake in Hamilton, these are opportunities you may not get anywhere else. So, again, I like being able to showcase that, and that is it.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Not being redundant, but I'd too like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and congratulate Mark Wallace on his retirement. And Mark, you can always run for school board again. And,
I was thinking that.
Mark was on the school board in the early 80s, I think it was. But you can always come back and be on the school board. And again, just thank everybody for coming out tonight.
Dr. Kalkstein.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Dr. Short.
Just to wrap up, thanking everyone for coming out tonight and really having an in-depth conversation. Something that I know excites all of us here is tackling student achievement issues. And it's something that we're passionate about. It's something that we look at daily. It's information that we discuss internally within our principal meeting, and I do believe we have another one tomorrow. So it's something at the forefront of what we do daily, and that's something that we'll continue to do. And speaking on behalf of the teachers, and I've said this many times, that we have the most talented group of teachers that I have ever been around, instructionally, passionately, everything that they do for kids. And it's wonderful that they come out and highlight some of the events that take place here at Gateway.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cerucci, before we go on, I think I need to say something in response to what Jack said, because Jack, you offered a statement about the amount of money that's invested in the board's activities, and I just want, it's hard to say this, but I'm not turning in my reports. I don't want anybody to know about that. I travel to Harrisburg, I travel around Pittsburgh, and I go to the Allegheny Intermediate Unit for meetings, and I don't turn in any requests back for travel or hotels or tolls on the turnpike. So our numbers look like we're not participating, but I'm sure the other board members are, quiet about their efforts as well. So,
But I think Jack was referring, there's other boards that there's nationwide conventions and they're going to Vegas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think they are
That's what I
going
meant
to
to say.
Fort Lauderdale.
Not that I object to such a trip.
That's what I meant.
So he means formally, but I think,
Some in Tuscany, because I'd be happy to go there.
even Rick and I just participated in a roundtable discussion. Did you pay for that? I think I was free and he was
Yeah, I did get an invoice for our budget. It does come out.
and it was insignificant. It was very minimal fee. I know that I network with people on Franklin, Penn, Trafford, and Plum boards, and I have conversations where I can pick up the phone and their advice. I'm just you're laughing at me.
I'm not.
But
I'm sorry.
I actually have a
appreciate
meeting next week
understand
with
that.
a school. I won't say the name, with a school board member and a superintendent to discuss school police force.
Well,
So
again,
there's a lot of networking going on. I don't want to give
It's
the
not
perception
revealed,
that, just because we don't have a big dollar amount, that there's not communication. Because for me, there's a lot of communication. And I don't usually give board reports, but there was a lot of things discussed tonight. And I just want to hit on a couple, especially with school board elections coming up. People don't understand all the time exactly what we do, and a large majority of what we do is managing money. And every time it has to do with athletics, it seems to draw this negative attention. But I want to reiterate that as a school board, we're obligated to take care of the facilities, take care of the grounds, if we weren't cutting the grass, I guarantee you, we would be getting phone calls, and you'd be getting phone calls about why the grass isn't cut, or why the snow is not plowed, or why there's cracks in the sidewalk because they're tripping hazards, or why we're cutting trees down the roots are destroying the foundations of the buildings. I mean, it is our obligation to take care of the building and grounds on this facility. And that means that when the track is 20 years old and it's cracking and our kids have shin splints, we have to address it. That means when the pool needs a humidifier, we have to buy it. So I just wanted to put that out there, that not everything that we do is directly related to education. If it was, you wouldn't have a building to sit in right now. And the only other comment that was brought up tonight was the $20,000 mower, which was not for the baseball fields. That mower was purchased for the hillside because we were paying, I think, $2,000 a cut.
It was nearly 1,500.
1,500. It's not Q&A. It's not discussion. It's board comments. I don't want anybody to think that we're putting turf in now because we had a mower that was $20,000 that we're not using. That wasn't the intent, and it was purchased because of the high dollar amount we were paying to cut the hillside, knowing that in less than 2 years it would pay for itself. So those are just comments in general about building and grounds, that, you know, this is a big responsibility that we all have to do, and we try to make the best decisions. And like Jack said, if people aren't happy with them, we probably won't be here, but if we weren't doing these things, we wouldn't be here either. So, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay. I hate to say to my colleagues that we have a request for an executive session for personnel reasons. So I would like to have a motion for that, knowing that there will be no more business done immediately after the executive session. We will adjourn. So can I have a motion to go into an executive session for
Motion
personnel?
for executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
1, 2, you lose. Thank you.
Okay, Jack.